Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dr. Paul Farmer, Chair of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard Medical School, co-founder of Partners in Health, on his book, Fever, Feuds, and Diamonds, Ebola and the Ravages of History. Meanwhile, Bill Barr, bye-bye. Exit stage right to a sinecure, I'm sure. Joe Biden wins the Electoral College and the presidency again. U.S. passes 300,000 coronavirus deaths. It's going to get worse. And the Gang of Fourish releases their coronavirus relief details, two separate bills. Negotiations, meanwhile, wrapping up on a budget deal to last through fiscal 2021. Oddly, before we find out if the Democrats will control the Senate in 3 weeks. Senate Democrats look for answers on why we face a possible vaccine shortage. And congratulations, your Goldman Sachs quota has been fulfilled on the Biden transition team and surpassed. Anonymous sources tell the Washington Post that 5 agencies, including DHS, state, and the NIH, have now been hacked. Lastly, Trump raising money for his own PAC while pretending to do so for the Republican Georgian runoffs. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We're here in New York, just waiting for a massive storm. Joining me today, as always, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma. Are you getting ready for this nor'easter that's supposedly coming?
Hello, Sam. And I'm a little bit excited. I mean, I like when New York is all snowy and, you know, old movie-esque, Miracle on 34th Street. Maybe I'll give that a watch. And plus, I just have to walk to work, so I don't have to drive.
It is nice. It is New York when it gets this type of snow, if we get it, foot, feels like it could be 100 years ago. Right. So it's pretty cool, but
I do feel for people who have to drive in this weather. Oh my God,
it's not happening. Yeah, it's not going to happen if this storm hits in the way that it's supposed to. Folks, thanks for joining us. That last story about Donald Trump raising money off the Georgia election is pretty funny.
I love it.
And we will see. I saw a report that said something like close to 20,000 voters have already voted in early voting, I believe. Who did not even vote in the general election.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we're seeing polling and it's immensely tight with Ossoff leading by 1 point. And I think Warnock leading by 1.5 points, something like that in the 538 average. But who's to know? I mean, we saw that
that's margin of error.
Margin of error, exactly. And sometimes that trends towards Republicans, not to be a Debbie Downer. But that means just get out and vote. If you're trending towards blue or if you know people in Georgia, tell them to vote.
So meanwhile, there was another election, and we will get to Bill Barr leaving. I mean, I this is it really is just so he could get, I think, an early start on whitewashing his brand in the context of having served as Donald Trump's lackey. We will talk about that later. But the other, when we talk about election, the other election that took place yesterday was the Electoral College met around the country and in their respective states and voted consistent with the way that their states or the population of their states basically suggested that they vote. That's the way our Electoral College works. And they elected Joe Biden president. Now, what do you do if you are committed? You know, they say that, it's almost impossible to change a person's mind if their job depends on it.
Yes.
Well, Newsmax is one of those people, and they've got a little bit of a dilemma because their business model is very much tied into the idea that Joe Biden is not the president. And so how are they going to walk that tightrope after the Electoral College has essentially validated the claims of everyone else that Joe Biden had been elected president?
Maybe they'll just say "not my president" over and over again on their broadcast.
Well, let's see.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Stinchfield. So today, the Electoral College voted, which means Newsmax will officially call Joe Biden the president-elect. Okay, but make no mistake, with legal challenges still out there, Newsmax still has not called this race. So how did we get to this disastrous position? I blame China and Democrats' exploitation of the Chinese virus. I'll break that down for you in just a moment. And Attorney General Bill Barr resigns his post today. Sadly, he turned out to be a huge disappointment as he kept the Hunter Biden investigations a secret, quote, to not influence the election. But by keeping it a secret, he did just that. Former Trump advisor Sebastian Gorka is here to weigh in. Plus, the Trump campaign's Mark Lauder will discuss with us the president's path forward and the best legal options at his disposal.
What a cavalcade. So now here's the question. If the Electoral College doesn't do it, what is it? Is it going to be like, as long as there's absolutely no lawsuits? I mean, how are they going to walk this tightrope?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they have a long 4 years ahead of them. And by the way, Stinchfield sounds like it sounds like a town in Indiana that like might be the subject of some sort of teen drama. But I digress. My favorite part was when he just said, "I blame China." More on that later. It's like,
of course,
as if this is something new. They're always going to blame China. And as you know, Xi Jinping installed Joe Biden personally. He was quite involved here. And that's why he can't be actually officially declared president. I mean, maybe they will pretend for the next years to come that Biden was installed by some foreign power and they're never going to fully acknowledge it. I think that's the only route that they can go down at this point.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily hurts Biden that much. And we should also say that Stinchfield was on that NRA TV with Dan Bongino. And there's inevitably probably some... a little bit of professional jealousy.
Certainly.
Bongino's
skyrocketing.
He's skyrocketing. He's figured out the Facebook algorithm, apparently. But I'm just curious as to what's going to be if the Electoral College is not the inciting event. Like at one point, they're going to have to. Are they just going to pretend like, oh, we haven't called the race, or are they going to call the race? Like, I guess the inauguration would be the next opportunity.
They'll never officially call it because they feel like Trump is still president. This is the facts over feelings crowd that always says the left is way too emotional. And yet there are facts right in front of their face that they continue to deny because it hurts their emotions.
Also, Stinchfield is off message. Trump tweeted this out. The only thing secure about our 2020 election was that it was virtually impenetrable by foreign powers.
So then how is China involved here? I don't know. Seems to be a little bit of a mismatch.
This is going to be pretty confusing, I think, for a while. And now it's possible if Biden runs for re-election in 2024, then they will call the race the 2020 race for Biden and keep the 2024 one up in air. It could be conceivable that he wins two terms in a row, and they still haven't called the race for him.
I don't know if I see that.
I mean, I'm just throwing out potential scenarios out there. All right. well, in just a moment, we're going to have Dr. Paul Farmer on the program. In the meantime, obviously, always things are a little hectic these days, certainly in my life, and they're just generally hectic. So how do you get time to sit down, learn some stuff? Well, my recommendation, an app called Blinkist. Blinkist is for anyone who cares about learning but doesn't have a lot of time. What it does is it takes the key insights and ideas from over 4,000 nonfiction bestsellers in over 27 different categories, and it puts them together in either 15 minutes worth of text or 15 minutes worth of audio explainers, or what they call blinks. So you use the blinks to get to a topic quickly. You get the key takeaways. Blinkist has even teamed up with popular podcast creators to blink those for you too, so you can get to the heart of a podcast episode fast. 15 million people are already using Blinkist. And look, here's the key. There's a lot of books, we've talked about this in the past, where I don't want to read, particularly like I try and, get some, how can I be more charming, more appealing to people and friendly? And so like those type of books, like, When Friends Influence People type of thing, I don't want to read the prose.
Yeah.
I just want the
information.
I want the
Mainline
information. And exactly. And something like Blinkist is great for that. Like I did that with all the Tim Ferriss books where, 80-20 type of situation where like 4-hour work week. Yeah, I want to work 4 hours a week. I mean, we end up doing the show 3 hours a day, so it's virtually impossible. Right. But nevertheless, using Blinkist is one of the best ways of getting that information. You can also use Blinkist Shortcast to quickly catch up on podcast episodes I've missed. And it would be nice if they did it for ours, because I talk so slowly. I don't know how people get through it at all. And, for books, Why We Sleep. I was not a book I was going to read the whole thing, but I'm like, I'd like to know, because then I get more anxious about why I'm not sleeping, and then I can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
But I've read a couple of them that way, or I should say, use the blinks. Blow Out by Rachel Maddow. Want to see what that was about. Didn't necessarily want to read the whole book. Sorry. But it was very helpful to understand that. Future of Capitalism by Paul Collier. You can check out. They have so many titles across like nonfiction stuff that are both like how-to and stuff like that, but also history.
More interesting at dinner parties when you eventually go to them again.
Exactly.
Right.
Go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Start your free 7-day trial. Get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. And lastly, it's easy to get caught up in the holiday craze. Easy to worry about going to a doctor's office and missing and basically keeping up with your health. When you need to see a doctor, it feels very difficult. Well, thanks to PlushCare, you can see a doctor right away, whether at home or on the go. PlushCare provides virtual doctor appointments through your smartphone or computer. Just pick a time that works for you. Book an appointment right online. With PlushCare, you can be diagnosed, treated, and even have a prescription sent to your pharmacy of choice within minutes. PlushCare accepts most major insurance carriers and is available in all 50 states. The doctors are there to help by discussing treatment options and providing prescriptions as needed. If you're having difficulty managing your emotions, PlushCare doctors are also available to help. You can schedule an appointment today to discuss your treatment options. PlushCare makes it easier for you than ever to take care of yourself inside and out. Start with your membership today. Go to plushcare.com/majority. Start a 30-day free trial. That's PlushCare, PlushCare.com/majority for a 30-day free trial. PlushCare.com/majority. Okay, it's a pleasure to welcome to the program the chair of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard University and a founding director of Partners in Health. He is a recipient of the Public Welfare Medal from the National Academy of Sciences. Dr. Paul Farmer, author of his latest Fever, Feuds, and Diamonds, Ebola and the Ravages of History. It is a real pleasure to welcome you to the program. Dr. Farmer, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to mention that you are the Cole Catronis University Professor and Chair of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard University, but I was afraid I couldn't pronounce it. So I want to give you a crack at it.
It's phonetic. It's a lovely couple who gave the award, and their name is pronounced Colocatronis, like phonetic.
Okay, well, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I want to start, before I get into your book, with, and I think this is going to address some of the topics in your book, but social medicine. Forgive me being so rudimentary, but what does that mean?
Well, in the book, I called it a regrettably obscure branch of the profession, which is a line I lifted out of Tolkien.
That's funny. Well, so
I read that in 5th grade, and it stuck with. I then memorized the whole damn trilogy. How's that for nerdy? Social medicine.
The Hobbit's usually the one people read, but the whole.
Oh no, Hobbits for wimps. Social medicine used to be a big deal in the 19th century when people were, acknowledging the impact of social disparities, racism, rapid urbanization, the usual, on health and well-being, and particularly of poor people. And, it kind of got obscure as the promise of biomedicine exploded in the 20th century. But it still always tries to get at that question: who lives, who dies, how come? And that's kind of how I try to use it in my practice and in my teaching and in this book. How did I do, Sam?
That's very helpful, because I think, that is, in many respects, a huge portion of your book here, at least, and I think also obviously indicative of your other books as well. Well, let's talk about this. So the book is I guess part ethnography, maybe part history, and then part about social medicine. And let's start with that ethnography. You went to West Africa to help deal with the Ebola epidemic that started there. And tell us a little bit about the genesis of the book. I know that it came from sitting down with folks who had, with a couple of people that you dedicated a significant amount of time to, who had survived Ebola, but had their families and their social networks had been devastated by it.
Right. Well, first of all, I would add that I don't think that I really conducted ethnography in the classic sense. There you learn a language. You're, what they even call them field languages in anthropology. And you spend a couple years just sitting and learning about people's lives. And I, of course, was invited there as a doctor, not as an anthropologist. So the ethnography, if there is one, was more a critical look at my own peers, the public health people. It's not a very flattering look, I know, but that's really where the ethnography occurred. For the garden variety ethnography, I really relied on the published work of anthropologists and social historians. So it's not in any snobby anthropology sense, a classic ethnography, but hey, that's not why I was there.
Right.
And so I spent, most of my time working on clinical endeavors. But the idea itself for the book, as you point out, came from one of those former patients, Ibrahim, who, to my surprise, asked me to interview him. And that never happens.
Yeah, well, tell us about Ibrahim's story, because you dedicate a chapter, or I should say two, between Ibrahim and Yobam. Yobam. And so tell us their stories and how that led you through this journey, I guess, of telling the broader story of Ebola and its the foundations, I guess, of the way that of the response.
The two of them had very different experiences, as you might imagine. One was a 26-year-old without children of his own at the time, and the other was a 37 or 8-year-old mom. And both of them just had devastating losses. Ibrahim told me that more than 20 members of his family had died, during or shortly after Ramadan, which is, a month. And, I just sat there, my mouth probably, my jaw on my chest. It's a very unusual thing for an infectious pathogen to take out that many members of a family. And for Yabom, it was a similar story, but she also lost her children and her spouse. And that's very hard to hear even as a clinician. And usually, if you're seeing patients, you don't spend hours, and certainly not years, talking to people about their experience. Maybe we should, but nobody has time for that. So, carving time out to really learn about their stories was important to me. And I always start at the beginning and say, where were you born and how did you grow up? And that's not the kind of conversation that happens easily in a clinical setting, in a hospital or a Ebola treatment unit. Certainly we didn't have time to really talk about anything. So those conversations unfurled over time after that initial exchange with Ibrahim when he asked me to interview him. When I say, Sam, that that's not something that happens very often, certainly if you work in the United States or in Haiti, patients are going to want to talk. They're going to want to talk to you about their experience. But to have someone ask you to interview him after that kind of experience, that was new for me after 30 years of being a doctor and anthropologist.
Why do you think he? I mean, what was it that? I mean, why do you think he wanted you to interview him? Why do you think he wanted to be interviewed, and why do you think he wanted you to interview him?
Well, as chance would have it, I had interviewed the other patients or recovering patients who were present that evening. And I had started this tradition, it became a tradition, of gathering socially with Ebola survivors, which, at the height of the epidemic, there were all kinds of predictions. It was in this rather beaten down hotel called the Mama Yoko, which I kind of made a character in the book. It's advertised as a luxury beachfront hotel, but I can't say much about the beach, not having had time to frequent it. And I don't know about the luxury part, but we just started having these dinners. And I had learned this in Haiti as a physician, a young physician in Haiti. People with chronic ailments that are life-threatening, they bond over their illness experience. And if we nurses and doctors are lucky, they bond with us too. So this was not a new experience for me in incorporating survivors, those most directly afflicted by whatever kind of problem we were talking about, be it AIDS or tuberculosis, or in this case, Ebola. It was familiar to me, that approach. That's how you learn a lot of things you would never learn. Even clinical matters come to the fore. Hidden clinical matters come to the fore when you start talking with survivors and their experience. So I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't know I wanted to write a book until after the exchanges with Ibrahim.
And you said two things I'm curious about. What did you find clinically from talking to those folks? A, and B, why is it surprising to have that many people in a family die of in the context of an infectious disease?
And I didn't answer your other question either. Why did he ask me? Part of it was that he knew that I had interviewed those other patients about their experience, and could have been that. I mean, I'm certainly not going to credit my own wonderful storytelling abilities, but whatever the reason was, I was very grateful that he did. The sort of things that you can uncover are not the clinical matters you can uncover are around the sequelae, as they're called in medicine, of the infection. So if you go back into the medical literature and study these viruses, they're called filoviruses, or used to be, you'll see that they're, in the rare instances in which the experience of people was actually followed up, you'll find that people had visual loss, blindness, seizures, and in the heat of the epidemic and inside an Ebola treatment unit, everybody was just scrambling to try and keep people alive. And too little attention was paid to what happened after they left the Ebola treatment unit. So those are the sorts of things that make a difference. And in the case of Yabom, the youngish woman who lost her children and spouse and mother and many others, she was one of those people who was facing visual loss, and that's readily treated. So those are the kind of reasons that you really want to get to know patients even after they leave your care for their acute disease. I learned a great deal, and am still learning a great deal by talking to the survivors, by staying in touch with them, by maintaining relationships with them. Now, why infectious pathogens don't take out whole families? They're not even reliably. They don't even reliably cause the same illness inside a family, and you can see that with COVID-19 as well, right? Some people, particularly elderly people and those with comorbid conditions, do poorly, but you also see sometimes perfectly healthy people, young people, even children die of COVID. So that kind of variability is very characteristic of most infectious pathogens, including those caused by virus, like both COVID-19 and Ebola are. And you really don't usually see everybody getting the same grievous illness and everybody facing the same risk of dying with any of these pathogens. And that's one of the sort of myths about Ebola, that it always causes severe disease, that it could never cause asymptomatic illness. Those things prove to be false, as with other pathogens. There are rare exceptions, Sam, like rabies. Rabies is devastating and usually lethal among everyone. But the great majority of viruses, bacteria, and parasites that cause disease in humans cause a very wide spectrum of disease.
And I want to get to, you talk about those myths surrounding Ebola in terms of survival too, and obviously a big part of your book is to talk about outcomes, differing outcomes as a function of where you are socially and economically. But let me ask you before we move on to that part about it, and I want to talk a little bit about the history, obviously, that because you dedicated a huge portion of your book to how you get to a point where the certain sort of where some of the response to Ebola, for instance, and we can also see the parallels with coronavirus, are structural. But I want to just curious in terms of did you learn anything in terms of the idea of having survived a pandemic or an epidemic in terms of maybe predicting how A, individuals, but also B, society reacts following a pandemic?
Yeah. There is a huge literature on this, but it's mostly written by historians, right? Because social historians and medical historians, because in the thick of the epidemic, there's enormous confusion and fear. Again, those are standard features of being in the middle of an epidemic or a pandemic. And that's well described too. And of course, we all felt that and are feeling it now around COVID-19. But there are also reliably demonstrated social responses beyond fear and confusion. And in what I saw with Ebola was that efforts to contain the disease were trumping efforts to care for the afflicted, right? And that, of course, was resonant to me because I'd seen it before. I'd seen it across that continent in the post-colonial setting. I knew it was related to a public health paradigm that lessened the value of Black lives. There's book after book, study after study. I knew that, and but I never really had studied it or written about it at great length. As much as it disturbed me to see this control over care paradigm. And the classic example, which you've discussed before, is around AIDS, right? Because to develop an effective suppressive therapy for the leading infectious killer of adults, young adults in the world, and then decree that it was not cost-effective, feasible, sustainable to use in Africa, the most affected continent, was very familiar to us. And we saw it with every other pandemic as well. So the general point that I would make, Sam, is that epidemics and pandemics always reveal a great deal about the social pathologies. So
Right.
Why would you give all the credit to the virus, right? It's the unequal social conditions that determine both risk for the infection and then risk for bad outcomes or good outcomes for some among the afflicted. And that's another staple of everybody who writes about social responses to pandemics or epidemics. You see it again and again.
And this paradigm of control over care, it functions both within the context of within a society, but also, in between, a broader society. So in other words, and this is what, and you write, obviously you write about this quite a bit, is heading to West Africa and seeing that the idea is less to provide for the patients who are suffering and more to make sure that this doesn't get outside of West Africa.
There was no question. Even if you were only seeing patients, you could sense this, right? But if you were also involved in discussing policy, international or global responses, funding to address, to water the clinical desert, if you were doing that, you got it all day long. That the real priority here is containment. And if there's a second priority, it's to protect healthcare professionals. And there were so few of them already that they couldn't possibly be the primary caregivers for those afflicted. And the primary caregivers were traditional healers and family members, right? So you had the first priority being containment, the second being protect the healthcare professionals. And then the third, if it was all too rarely a priority at all, was to make sure the afflicted survived. So that's really an inversion of the idealized social contract that we have with physicians and nurses. The idea that we have embraced, and I think it's embraced all over the world, is that the priority is to take care of the patient in front of you. But that was not the story with this epidemic, nor with other epidemics of Ebola or a related pathogen called Marburg, because they happen in Africa where the natives, as they are still called to this day, by the way, the natives are less important than protecting the surrounding world, and particularly the rich white world, the post-colonial world. So that was familiar to me, but this time I tried to, dig deeper into the roots of that paradigm. And by the way, I would say that is not the paradigm that's at play here in the United States around COVID. What we're seeing here is not control over care. We're seeing a kind of containment nihilism where you have the senior administration, the leadership of the central administration of the United States saying, we're not going to do contact tracing. We're not going to be able to control this, or we're only going to do so after we have a vaccine. And of course, that has meant and will continue to mean ongoing loss of life from COVID-19. So either side of those imbalances we need to address, but the ones we see in the post-colonial world are almost always control over care.
Yeah, I want to get into that because I was going to say the administration is the complete inverse, of course, except for the implications of that lack of containment, except for the care. That level of care seems to end outside of their circle. And so the only thing that sort of leaks out of that circle is the lack of containment and then the implications of that spill over. But I want to talk about just some of the aspects of, because you talk about the hundreds of years of extraction from this area, starting, with the slave trade, working through commodities like latex, wood, diamonds, and how does that how does that extraction, or how does that create the structures that inhibit the ability to provide for care and for just a response for an epidemic?
Well, that ended up being, as you can tell, the real question I wanted to ask is, how do you create a medical desert? And a medical desert is a clinical desert. That is, there are not people to take care of you, who are certainly not those who are well trained and well protected, right? But it's also a public health desert, right? So you don't have the surveillance capacity. And to do those things, both the clinical and public health objectives, to meet those objectives, you have to have staff, stuff, space, and systems. So the question becomes, how does extractive colonialism remove the possibility for having the right staff, stuff, space, and systems? And some people aren't interested in that, or don't have the patience for it. And it's certainly not the question we were asking in the middle of the epidemic.
Right.
But it's an important question nonetheless. And, a friend of mine who's now a household figure, Tony Fauci, a mentor of mine, when he read a draft of this last year, he was saying, this book is 5 inches thick, printed out, double spaced or double sided. And, you spend so much time on the history, and I got that quite a bit, but I came to feel that it was the historical underpinnings of this desiccation and creation of a medical desert that interested me most. And the things that I thought, if you're going to write about people like Ibrahim and Yabom, then you need to understand how they got into these dire straits, ones in which they would lose such a large number of their family members to this disease, which claimed the lives of 0 white Americans, as you know, and very few Europeans either.
What are the broad structures of that? Because, one of the things, I feel like it is analogous, but not nearly, obviously, the dynamic is very different. But in New York State, for instance, over the course of the past 10 years, we've had closure of nearly 20% of the public hospitals. We've seen a diminution of resources to those hospitals, and we can track the deaths of people in that big, in March, April, May in New York. And we can see that aligns with where resources have been distributed or not. And there's obviously a huge economic and class component to both deaths and contractions within the context of New York State, anyways. And so there's a slight analogy, right? I mean, obviously you set a context, but how does this extraction? I guess maybe you tell me if it's best sort of exemplified by the fact that a complete absence of, or not complete, but an absence of latex gloves in a place that you couldn't have more latex, really, when we talk about West Africa.
Well, the thing that probably rolled out the red carpet for Ebola in that part of West Africa, which, as some people call Upper West Africa, is probably civil war, right? But the wars were fought over the extractive trades. That's why they call them blood diamonds, the diamonds from Sierra Leone. And, Liberia is used to be the United States really latex plantation. And that was Firestone that set that up almost 100 years ago with a famous 99-year-long lease of something like 1 million acres. I mean, this is a huge endeavor. And so there are the ironies, right? Here we're getting diamonds that are blooded, and here in a place where there's so much latex you could swim in it, the nurses and doctors called to respond to Ebola don't even have latex gloves. But, looking back at the history, first of all, just to, stick with the example of Liberia, which is, the oldest independent republic on the continent by many accounts, and it was founded by Americans, Black Americans, at least its coastal reaches. By the time I had set foot in Liberia, some people estimated that there were fewer than 50 practicing physicians, clinically active physicians in the country. And, just doing the math, you could say, well, that would be like having 6 doctors in the city of Boston. And, I can't walk 5 feet in the Brigham and Women's Hospital and not bump into 5 of my colleagues who are physicians. It's just crazy, this disparity. So then you start looking back and saying, well, what about training nurses and doctors in this part of West Africa? And you find out that in the European colonies of Guinea and Sierra Leone, the French and the British didn't even bother founding a single medical school in those countries. And in fact, in Sierra Leone, the oldest European colony in that part of the world, British colony, not only was there no medical school founded before they left in 1963, I was alive already, but they didn't found a nursing school either. And they took the trouble in 1902 to ban Black doctors from the Colonial Medical Service. So those are the kind of details that make a big difference down the line when you start talking about where's the staff, the stuff, the space and systems to respond to, Ebola, without even talking about outmigration of professionals like experienced nurses to the UK, the United States, other places where they end up. So I thought that was an important part of the history to know, to understand not only why this place is a medical desert, but what we could do to irrigate it. Is it some mysterious cultural problem? No, it's, as you said, these are structural problems. And that means they need to be addressed structurally as well.
And ultimately that means for you reparations to come in and I guess to build those infrastructures, right? I mean, to like you say, irrigate them, I guess, those deserts and create the infrastructures to essentially catch up on some level of those literally hundreds of years that they missed in developing these type of medical infrastructures.
I'm perfectly comfortable with the term reparations. In my line of work, you need reparative action to train the staff, buy the stuff, develop the clinical spaces, and put in place the systems. I mean, some of the systems we're talking about aren't just infection control, which is a systems approach, like, for example, involves PPE, respiratory precautions, contact precautions, the kind of things that are now the subject of public discussion in the United States. But it also means the systems required to pay people regularly. I mean, I met nurses, including a couple who died of Ebola, who hadn't been paid in a year or 2 years. And the answer was always, or the reasons given were always the same: we don't have the resources. And, that's pretty hard to stomach, if you're in the middle of a part of Sierra Leone where, diamond production is happening round the clock just 5 miles away. And so we need to link this extraction, not just that which is going on now, which is pretty substantial, but to understand what it has cost people who live in that part of the world to have been subjected to this steady drumbeat of extraction for so long. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to think of any other place in the world where it's been going on that long and when sustained over that amount of time. As you said, from slaves to gold and diamonds to latex, wood, all the treasures on top of the earth and those just under it. So yeah, we need reparative action. And, that's going to involve things like building stronger hospital systems, putting proper training in place so that they do have the staff they need, and thinking about what kind of infusions of resources, including capital, are required to build up health systems in that part of the world.
What I think is fascinating about your work is that those lessons obviously apply both, within those societies to other institutions and other, outside of medicine. I mean, obviously, they're interrelated in terms of like infrastructure in a country just writ large is going to implicate, obviously, health outcomes. But that's also a dynamic that can be applied in other countries. And
well, just to take our own, as you pointed out, we have not only not invested in public health, but we've divested from public health. So any effort to understand the reasons, plural, for which we've done so spectacularly poorly in responding to COVID-19 are going to have to take account of that divestment, right? And, I think most people involved in the press for reparations in the United States, the American descendants of slaves, would not be keen to hear us use the term to describe needed investments in public health, or public education, or public transportation, or public anything. Those discussions are often about, since 40 acres and a mule, are often about the private reparative action to the descendants of those who had been enslaved. And I get that entirely. We also need much, much broader reparative action around this, the safety net of this country, including its public health apparatus. And the return on our investments in basic science research, every American who's going to get a vaccine should marvel at that. But we've been done very poorly investing in a national health care delivery system that can, be a safety net for everyone. So we need it here as well.
What other, is that, obviously those are lessons derived from our response. What else? I'm curious if in your response to epidemics in the past, you've seen anything analogous to the idea that, obviously the administration has sort of been, like I think you said, nihilistic in terms of containment. But have you ever seen this level of sort of denial? We have 300,000 Americans dead. We're going to have more than likely and at least 100,000 more before this is over. Have you seen anything that's even remotely analogous to this type of societal response?
Well, I think part of the reason I would say no, I have not, is because I am an American and I was born here and raised here, and spend much of my time as a doctor and a teacher here. Of course, that's my day job. So part of this affective, component of it is that it's striking so close to home. And that's when compared to other pandemics that we've seen, for example, cholera. I've been in the thick of not one cholera pandemic, but two. And, the United States wasn't spared entirely when the largest one, until very recently, erupted in Haiti, right? Of course, cases ended up in Florida and Texas and other border states, but it's not like it became out of control anywhere. The closest to that for me would be HIV, which came along when I was just beginning my medical studies. So, there's another affective component. When I was doing my medical school rotations, my clinical rotations, AIDS was far and away the leading killer of young adults in this country. So our teaching hospitals in Boston were full of people who were dying of AIDS, but I also got to see them stop dying of AIDS when we developed new tools to treat them. But this experience has really been, for me, unprecedented, to see such a rich and an egalitarian country as ours do so poorly. And of course, part of the reason is because of the inegalitarian nature of our country. Another is the divestment from public health. And another is the nature of our public health system, which is very patchwork, like our political system, like our administrative systems. Whereas in Rwanda, the only place I've spent a significant amount of time during the COVID epidemic, their response was so much better and was reflected in very small numbers of cases and even and really tiny numbers of deaths. And that was in part because they did have a national program, not just a national COVID response program, but a national healthcare delivery system that could provide standardized, services, including preventive services that will be relevant even more with the vaccine, but also contact tracing. I have little doubt that at one point in this epidemic, Rwanda, which has 12 million population, had as many contact tracers as we did in the entire United States.
Wow.
It's just, we have been slow on the uptake with a lot of reasons. And again, that gets us back to the leadership question.
And those structural forces. I mean, we just don't have the pipes in some way to fill, to send out what we need to send out, whether that's, healthcare or even resources to get people to behave in such a way that they protect themselves. We don't have any of that infrastructure.
And that from your own work in the media, how splintered that is. But it's you can see the analogies, across the board. That's cost us a lot. But I would add that, if you look at the stimulus bills or the COVID response bills that have managed to wend their way through Congress, and they're very few in number, very little of that money went to public health. Right. So again, that seems like really a bad idea in the middle of a public health crisis to skip over investments in public health. And so we still need to do that now. We're going to have to, print money. Governments can do that. But we're going to have to do something to get those resources into the public health system and the safety net.
Hope springs eternal. Dr. Paul Farmer, Fever, Feuds, and Diamonds, Ebola, and the Ravages of History. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll put a link to that book at majority.fm. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. It's a real pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, folks, quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, the other big story that we have today, of course, not only Joe Biden winning the Electoral College, I guess.
Winning again.
Keeps winning. So much winning. But that is also the resignation of Bill Barr, who is resigning with, I guess, a month left in his potential tenure. I don't think he would be reappointed by Joe Biden.
That washes the blood off his hands.
Well, I mean, that is the thing that I think is like, I hope that we are not going to see this guy on some type of reformation tour, and that people are going to remember that the idea that he, was pushed out with 30 days left is not some, and, I this is one of those few times where I think I agree with what is being said on Fox. Here's Brian Kilmeade this morning on Fox and Friends. And I think this is important to keep in mind.
So that was a bit of a surprise yesterday as that news came out that AG Barr was resigning. And then you thought, okay, here comes the slings and arrows and the resignation letter, which doesn't mention the president. Absolutely wrong. They had a good meeting. He's only getting out 3 weeks early. He says, after Christmas, I'm just going to call it a day. And I just think when it's all said and done, and when many books are written about a fair book is written about the Trump administration, you'll turn out that he is the MVP. He came in at the exact right time to so-called land the plane after the Mueller investigation. And I think by coming out and saying what he saw and say right now, I didn't say there weren't any problems. I said there weren't widespread problems to overturn an election. And when it comes to an investigation, the Department of Justice rules clearly say you're not supposed to reveal someone's being investigated, because forever they're going to be tarred if they decide there was nothing there and they decide not to go further.
Well, I mean, they did ultimately reveal that that Hunter Biden was being investigated. I think what he was looking for is you're not supposed to interfere with an election by revealing that an investigation is happening. But I will say this. I do hope that Bill Barr is considered the MVP of the Donald Trump administration, so that people don't forget who this guy is. There was too many folks who are high-placed in the legal profession who basically said, we can trust Bill Barr. He is, he's old school Republican. I think to a certain extent he probably was, and people should learn that lesson, that that's your old school Republican.
Well, certainly. And by the way, Kilmeade is citing a Wall Street Journal report that Barr chose not to investigate or chose not to take a hands-off approach to any Hunter Biden thing, which I find a little dubious. Apparently it was one source I don't know. But I do want people to remember Bill Barr as the MVP of the Trump administration, because he was certainly the MVP of authoritarianism, of the trend towards fascism that Trump wanted to do. He was a good soldier. He politicized the Justice Department in a way we haven't seen since Watergate, and definitely worse than that. And that is how he should be remembered, because we're seeing the rehabilitation of people like Mattis, other Lewandowski even is on cable news, other folks who were intimately involved in the Trump administration who deserve the blame for being in those circles just as much as others.
And of course, he had a big piece in Lafayette Square in those protests over the summer. That's it for us today, folks. We will see you tomorrow. Unless, of course, you are sticking around, in which case we'll see you right now. Just a reminder, you can join us in the fun half. We have a whole box of swag over there that we got to start wearing, at one point.
On air?
Well, right now would be a great time to I'll set this up tomorrow where, you would show off maybe like the cap, like the Majority Report cap, or I would have like a series of carpenter pencils, or maybe some stickers. You know what? There's no hoodie, but there's a bunch of t-shirts.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm cold, so I was hoping for.
I know it's a little bit cold in here.
We have the window open.
We got the window open. Yeah. I got our CO2 levels down to like less than 450. I think
Sam
at this point.
Is super proud of the CO2 levels.
Oh yeah.
Measure that? Can you measure that? Is that a thing?
There is a.
He does it every day.
I have a measuring device because I want.
I was wondering how you guys were doing this. I didn't even know you were in the same room. This is.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a
business.
Big plastic thing between us here, like a. More or less, really a clear shower curtain. And then we got multiple filters sort of over there. At one point, we'll do a thing, maybe like when we were able to take it down, when we've both been vaccinated and fumigated and whatnot. But just a reminder, Nomi, you'll be able to deliver a reminder on your show. But folks, you can support this show by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show, and then you get extra content every single day, more often than not. Almost always. Let's put it that way. And justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. If you want some of that merch that we've been talking about, everybody's talking about it. Everybody is talking about it. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. Check it out. Also, and as always, subscribe. My daughter called me 5 minutes before the end of the show today. 5 minutes before the start of the show. I'm like, sweetie, what's up? Is it an emergency? Because she knows not to call me now. Right at that time, it's panic. She goes, you need to know that you are 8,000 people away from reaching 1 million YouTube subscribers.
Wow. Wait, is that closer than we were yesterday?
I think by like maybe 50 people, maybe. I don't know.
Hey, not bad.
I don't know. So subscribe. Let's see if we can just nail this thing.
For your daughter.
Yes.
She's like, so I need to go to college. Please subscribe.
She's just excited because that's in her, with 15-year-olds. YouTube subscribers is she's like, you have 1 million YouTube subscribers. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't really feel that different from when we had 50 YouTube subscribers. And she's like, Dad, it's huge. You don't know how big this is. And I'm like, it's not quite like the.
It's not like you're an influencer doing makeup or something like
honestly, that. That's when you really have she used to watch this, I can't remember the name of it, but this woman who had a comedy thing. She would put lipstick all over her face like this and then talk in a really annoying way. That was her big thing. And now my son watches extreme hide and seek games.
Oh my God, what?
No, this is the generation. They're super
he watches a show.
What about
doing
it?
The Unnamables or something like that. And it's just these guys, like these 20-year-old guys who do stuff we got a trampoline in the house today. We're just going to bounce on it and do funny stuff. Or then we're going to play extreme.
Yeah. I told you we should do that for Majority Report. And you laughed at it.
I know it. We really missed. out there.
All right. But with all that said, subscribe. Maybe we will do a little trampoline work at one point when this is when we're who knows.
Absolutely.
After COVID, it's all bets are off with this channel. That's what I'm telling you that right now. So you subscribe to what you think is a political news program, and then all of a sudden it's going to be extreme hide and seek. Nomi, who's on your show today?
Today we have Aaron Bastani from Navarro Media out in the UK to talk about Brexit, because that's still that's still a piece of drama that's happening right now.
And
are we having a technical difficulty?
Yeah, your audio is great, but your video is a little bit slow right now, at least to me. I don't know if that is for
I think so.
It's on my end too. Let me see if I can fix that. I might have to be right back, guys.
All right. And in the meantime, check out the Antifada, patreon.com/the Antifada. And they've got a Twitch channel. What is it? Twitch.com/the Antifada?
Twitch.tv/the Antifada.
They're still in soft launch. Matt, what's happening on your many projects?
Tonight, the Left Reckoning YouTube channel, there's going to be a David Griscom stream at 6 Eastern time.
And we will have Nomi will be back with us in just a moment. But was she able to today at it's going to be Aaron Bastani, Joshua Kahn Russell, and Napoleon Da Legend. Check it out. YouTube.com/The Nomi Key Show. And we will be back in just a moment. 646-257-3920. We'll take some IMs and we may get some calls. All right. See you soon. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Do we still? What happened to Nomi?
Connectivity issues.
I think she's probably working on her Wi-Fi. I'll let her in when she comes.
She is a Wi-Fi technician, a well-known Wi-Fi technician. Let's read a couple of IMs while we can. Bear at home too. The YouTuber's name is Unspeakable. My kids watch them too. That's exactly right.
Unspeakable?
Yeah, they're like just a couple of guys, and it's like they'll do like I come out, Saul's, like this is the way it works. Every morning
they do pranks and stuff.
Saul gets to watch like 30 minutes of that's his he does it in the morning. It's like his morning coffee.
Apparently they make up to $16 million.
Yeah.
There's another cool one where people like drop stuff off of a very high platform, like onto a spike or something, like a piano or watermelon, and you just watch it in super slow-mo.
Well, you know where that started. Letterman did that.
Really?
Letterman used to drop stuff off of the building back in the way back. That was.
Also did Will It Float? Remember that one?
Will It Float? Yeah. I mean, you could do all that stuff. And the thing is, like, you could do that today and you could make $1 million.
Yeah, right. Again, I mean, $16 million, Unspeakable gaming YouTube channel. My God.
Yep.
I mean, there are like 14-year-olds on TikTok making more than I'll make in my entire life.
Right. So
more than Letterman.
Our last show.
Yeah.
And no, we'll be back. I can't wait to turn this whole channel into just like, I don't know, some type of like kids pranking dad. That's what it would be, right? Like I would get Saul to like set up pranks and I would pretend like I got nailed by them.
Yeah. You'd have to just
don't tell anybody I'm pretending, folks. I'm trusting you. And then like that, that would be, I think we would make $1 million.
Oh yeah. In a day.
Or you could just fight with AOC on the internet and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Try to get her to fight.
Let's get into it. I guess, I was going to ask you, like, have you followed this? I've like been pretty studious in like not like jumping it because let me just say this, like with that. I mean, we're going to play some footage and I have to say that overall, I think pressure on politicians is good. If the important thing is that it, from my perspective, that the good faith, like what is the agenda in pressuring the politicians? And at the end of the day,
YouTube views isn't sufficient.
Well, it's not even just YouTube views. I mean, but put that aside for a moment. Like, but there is that is always an incentive, I think, for everybody on this platform, for some maybe more than others, but we all respond to that on some level. Like nobody likes to be,
and that's also why she responded, by the way. Let's just be very clear.
Right. Right.
He wouldn't have responded if he had 1,000 YouTube followers.
Correct. And, but I think, what's becoming clear and what is clear with Jimmy Dore in particular is that this is not about pressuring politicians to do something. This is not about a long-term strategy to empower the most progressive forces in the Democratic Party to get real change. This is about him trying to prove, and it's an easy thing to do, at least in terms of what his requirements for proof are, him trying to prove that they're all frauds and that really the only true person out there is him.
Or the guy who took Assad money.
Well,
awesome. Like, sorry. He accepted money.
It's Tulsi. It's Tulsi today, but it was Jill Stein before. Right. Like, he's not out there like trying to re-recruit Jill Stein. He's like, and I'll remind you, in 2016, it was Elizabeth Warren. I mean, go back and look at that interview that I did with him. He was saying the plan was Donald Trump is going to get elected and then we're going to get Elizabeth Warren. And so it is whomever in that moment is not the person who's in a position to do something and to make any type of change. granted incremental, but yes, politicians are not going to do revolutionary change in that regard. They can't. Like, our system is not such that they can.
And there's a resentment towards Ocasio-Cortez for engaging in politics that isn't strictly class reductionist politics, where she'll talk about issues of sexism and issues of racism that I don't think are the politics that Dore chooses to engage in. What he cares most about is AOC owning Pelosi, like owns, rips into, that kind of stuff, which isn't about building power.
Well, he was attacking her, like I say, before she came into office. In 2018, in 2018, when just during the general election, she was asked a question by, I think it was Chris Cuomo or somebody on CNN, like, should Andrew Cuomo be the governor? And she was like, in the general election, yeah, people should go out and vote for Andrew Cuomo.
And she called AOC Mama Bear one time, so that must mean she's completely sold out.
And also we did a video on that, because I've just seen this because people have like posted it now. And I will say that, like, at the time we're like, you know what, you want Cuomo in there instead of a Republican, because we could get you could make it harder for him to veto things, as opposed to a Republican would just come out and do it. We have no IDC now.
But they're all the same, man. Right. And that's the politics that he wants to engage in.
I think
know where to go from there, though.
But go ahead, Naomi, with that.
It's interesting. I think this is about something actually bigger. So there's the Jimmy Dore issue, which is fueled by anything from having an agenda to clickbait and really like making left commentary, frankly, cheap, because it's not nuanced and it's not sophisticated and it's not like he has a background in political theory or organizing or frankly any politics. It is literally
he just doesn't read. He doesn't read anything. Except
right.
He thinks, honestly, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's emotion.
You don't need to have any of that background. You can just go and read. There's a lot of stuff you can read online 100%. And educate yourself.
So there's one thing and the people, frankly, who echo it, I'm disappointed in, not because we don't all agree that we should pressure, as Sirotto's take is, pressure certain lawmakers to push Medicare for all forward. What happens power structure wise, and this is what my concern right now is, we don't have actual movement leaders out there, like real movement directing the left. And so what happens is he's sucking up that void, like he's taking over that void and preying on people's vulnerabilities right now. People are angry and they're concerned and they don't know where to channel their energy, partly because institutions have been dismantled on the left. Unions are very weak. And it's hard to get into the nuance because so many of us have not been in the halls of Congress and in power. So it's hard for us to navigate how power structures work. So he's actually preying on people, and people who are encouraging his behavior and echoing it, with all due respect, might be playing the same game. And we might agree with them on 85% of the issues, but this is a clickbait game. This is about fame. There are hosts on air who want to make change. I think all of us are really concerned about educating our audience and bringing on informed people to help us understand everything, issues and how to move through and push for these change. And then there are hosts who want to be multimillionaires and famous. And, let's just make those lines very clear. Yeah. So and not to mention, he has taken money admitted to taking money from pro-Assadist groups. So he's not the pure guy that he wants to pretend. I like Jimmy.
He has a problem with those pro-Assad groups, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't think he's
neither did Tulsi.
But that's the problem. He can't sit here taking money from anybody that's not your audience. Means you're technically not pure, right? It's just he can't use a set of standards for you, Sam, for taking, Harry's razor money or whoever you promoted today. I was off air. I didn't see. Double that down. Versus
Blinkist. Get it right.
Blinkist. But aside from that, I think the other thing that we have to be concerned about is, okay, so how do we affect change? How do we get Medicare for all on the table? Embarrassing rather than pressuring, because he wasn't pressuring. He was embarrassing.
Well, that's my point.
Squad.
That, like, look, I think that there is, I mean, on some level, like, I've always been thinking about this a lot. Like, on some level, I'm like, I think there is value in his making a racket to a certain extent. because I think there is an element where, let's say the squad or whomever we're talking about in terms of progressives, I think it's good for them to feel the pressure. I think it's also good for the leadership to see that they're getting pressure from their people because, like, on some level, right, these are their constituencies. And politicians know, like, if your constituencies are starting to act up, you're going to come to me for an ask. And that means I'm going to have to deliver because these people's backs are against the wall. So I think that to a certain extent, like I haven't sort of weighed in on the whole Twitter thing so much on Twitter itself, because I also think, like, I think this is...
Because you have 1 million people following you. That's why. Because you can just go on air and make the argument.
Well, no, but I'll make the argument here. But I think that it's like, in some weird way, Twitter is in some ways more public in some ways than the show here, because the show is, like, limited. There'll be maybe 70, 80, 100,000 people who watch the show. But on Twitter, it can go to journalists who then create the conventional wisdom more. And so, I mean, I think, like, that's... I don't have a problem, but again, I think it's in bad faith. And I think, like, it's a problem if people fall down the road. I want to play just this segment from Katie Halper's show, because here is the way Dore reacts to any type of nuance here. And look, in the original semi-endorsement I had of his idea, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I don't know if asking for a vote on Medicare for all is really the thing you want to ask for. There may be other things, like committee, like functional things, right? Like things that actually do something. Like
$1,200 immediately, like a relief package for people who are getting evicted. Let's talk about the priority of needs.
I'm talking more about,
that
like,
Sorota's laying out.
That Sorota's laying out, but I also think that, like, just are more like things that start to build your structural power. I mean, if you're talking about leveraging a vote to give power to Nancy Pelosi, it's like, okay, let's get some committee, let's get rid of, this is a big ask. It's not going to happen. Seniority with committee chairs, for instance, or something that creates, it's like, give me some farmland so I can start to grow stuff. Like, give me some structural things.
As opposed to a blowtorch or something like that. And I know we're going to get to the Katie Halper clip.
Here's a clip where Stoller, who is very thoughtful about these things, and his politics are, put aside the ideological, parts of his politics. He really does focus on, the movement building and the structural things about the Democratic Party. And he's not as, he's not as jaded about the Democratic Party. He just sees it as like a vehicle. There are some Democrats that he thinks are good. I think we're similar in that respect. But he sees, like, there is a complete absence of any type of, like, sort of governing philosophy or even legislative philosophy of the Democrats.
He doesn't get angry about it, though. He just accepts it. He's like, this is what we're dealing with. And once you're able to realize how this is structured, institutions treat its creatures. He's not
making his living as a guy who sells himself as knowing nothing about anything, but is going to espouse on everything and then make money on it, which incidentally is exactly what Limbaugh used to do. I'm just an entertainer. I'm not doing anything. But here is that Katie Halper segment with who's on there? Stoller, Brianna, and Gray, and Jimmy Dore.
And, like, they are asking for things. But I think, and they're getting things. They're getting some representation on committees. It's insider.
Fuck off. Fuck you. Fuck off. Go fuck yourself with your fucking committee, fuckface. You fucking egghead nerd. I don't give a fuck about your committee shit. Nobody voted for her for a fucking committee. Why don't you stop saying that stupid shit?
All right, now pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second. I want to, this isn't as long of a clip as we should be playing, but understand, we'll go back to it, but yeah, Dore likes Stoller. This is him. This is like a sort of a road comic-y thing to do, like where you get, like, you sort of, I'm not really bullying you, but I'm going to bully you type of thing. But whatever. I mean, I
think he's trying to bully him.
Well, he is to a certain extent, but what happens is Jimmy gets nervous when there's any type of nuance or anything that is like, it's not even intellectual. Like, he's not talking theory here. He's just talking about like, hey, this actually is not, nobody has a magic wand. Like, you need to have power to exercise power.
When we're engaging in politics, that's when he gets nervous. When it's not just emotion and vitriol, that's when he gets nervous. Right. When you actually have to make tough decisions on how things are going to happen. And again, a Medicare for all vote. I was more in your camp, Sam, before this when I thought about it, that's one good thing to leverage. But I don't even think it is a good thing to leverage. We already know the over 100 co-sponsors on the Medicare for all bill. We know that from last year. It's not going to have change this time around. It's going to fail, and that could hurt Medicare for all going forward. It's infinitely more important to leverage those committee chairships because he doesn't understand how politics works. That would change things, like Richie Neal being the chair of Ways and Means. That's a massive impediment to progressive change, but he is not interested in understanding that. And what Naomi said earlier, I think, is really important. The fact that he is preying on people and their hurt and their emotion and lack of representation in democratic leadership, and making them basically nihilists and misleading them into thinking that Ocasio-Cortez, one of like the 4 people fighting for us, is the problem. That's who you should direct your anger to. Potentially because she's a woman. I mean, I get that vibe. I really do. And I know that Francesca Fiorentini faced ridiculously insane sexist attacks from him in DMs and stuff.
Oh, well, this guy,
like, that's where it is. Clear. That's where it resides.
Jimmy pretends like I don't exist, but it took about 4 seconds before he would respond to Jamie's tweet. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. I mean, let's be clear here. I don't know if Jimmy's criticism is a function of misogyny. I just know that that he loves to go after women, and when it comes to actually having a conversation with someone who is very similarly situated to him, we both came from comedy. We both are old. And went to law school. Like, literally at one point I ran into him at I don't know, Netroots, when we had the same suit, the exact same suit that I got at Gentleman's Warehouse over here. I mean, that's how similarly situated we are. But for whatever reason, he's a little nervous about engaging me with this. But let's play this whole clip, because I think I want people to have the context. It's not just Jimmy doing this, but understand he is ignoring the reality. And then you need to ask yourself why. Like what is he doing? The idea that you would attack AOC in this way. Like, it's one thing, like, look, I've seen critiques of AOC from people who are, full on socialists or communists. And they say, yeah, of course, like she is part of the capitalist mechanism, and ultimately her what she is espousing is fundamentally a maintenance of the capitalist system, and even if it is making it a reforming aspects of it, and even if she has a capitalist critique, et cetera, that's perfectly legitimate. People have different ideas of what politics should be. But in terms of her functioning within the context of a system that I can assure you, Jimmy Dore does not have a problem with capital accumulation.
Exactly. Thank you. That's it.
Functioning within the context of that and working for the people that supposedly Jimmy Dore is out there fighting for, like, she's the last person that you want to disempower. Well, Sam, one thing to pressure, but you don't want to disempower, because that's it, folks. The rest of it is just sitting around and masturbating, with all due respect. But let's play this whole segment just so that we can be, represent it fairly.
Supposed to extract something for your vote. Whatever it is, you're supposed to extract. Guess who did that last time? The Blue Dogs. Guess who won't do it this time? The progressives.
So this is I tweeted positively about your campaign because I like that you're saying they need to ask for things. And one of the things, AOC responded to me and said, actually, we have asked for things, and I'm not being public with what we're asking for. But
it's a secret. It's a secret what they're asking for.
That's a real. But it's not. I mean, I know some of the I mean, AOC is not the lead negotiator. That would be Pramila Jayapal. And like they are asking for things, but I think, and they're getting things. They're getting some representation on committees. It's insider.
Fuck off. Fuck you. Fuck off. Go fuck yourself with your fucking committee, fuckface. You fucking egghead nerd. I don't give a fuck about your committee shit. Nobody voted for her for a fucking committee. Why don't you stop saying that stupid shit?
That's directed at Matt, not at Jayapal.
Fucking Matt.
I have a point here.
Yeah, you fucking bet you do. It's called a Poindexter. That's a fucking stupid thing to say.
Okay. The point.
So funny, guys.
A space of healing. And
I had a point, and then I forgot it.
I feel that I can say this because I love Matt, and he's valuable, and he knows that.
Yeah, we just got to knock him upside the head a little bit.
And I hope he knows I'm saying this all with
you get to yell at me too.
I hope he understands I mean this all with a comedic undertone.
No, I get it. I think really that.
In other words, I don't have a real those material benefits that are going to build power. I don't have a real response to it, and it undercuts my entire argument. So I'm going to respond comedically in such a way that I shout over you and throw you off. I mean, look, I can tell you this. One thing Jay Moore used to do, just sort of reminds me of Jay Moore. You ever watch any segment with Jay Moore, like particularly one like those interstitial shows? If there's a guy who's on there with him, I can guarantee you a significant portion of those times he's punched that person in the nuts or grabbed them in the nuts right before they go on air. That's, this is what you do to create some dominance.
That's it. When you're being interviewed, I mean, I had that thing with Katie last week and the same thing happened. She just came at me and I was like, what is the strategy here when we wanted to get into details? But Sam, I mean, I just got so repulsed from that, not from the style, but from the point we are in society right now, with the crisis that we're facing, with the mass evictions that are on the line in a week and a half, with people who are completely out of money, and the left, he is picking fights with left leaders and saying that he's being strategic. This is the most unstrategic, dangerous thing you can do. Most unstrategic, dangerous thing you can do at this moment. And that was repulsive. That was an offensive in the entire show, frankly. Like, if you want to have Matt Stoller on, let him talk. Let him make his argument. Don't have a bunch of comedians on to come up with some better strategy.
No, he's a comedian only when he wants to escape the
responsibility for what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what he doesn't know. All right, well, let's play the rest of that segment. Sorry.
What you're saying, so what the progressives are asking for are some insider procedural stuff. And I think the reason is that they have not decided that they are a coherent bloc that wants to do anything.
You're right about that.
That's basically what I'm saying. Is they're loyal soldier Democrats. Put AOC aside, because AOC was one of the few to actually sort of say, maybe the CARES Act wasn't such a great idea. She did stop the
after she voted for it.
Well, so she also stopped the HQ2 head. I'm not like, the point here is, I think the issue is that progressive Democrats are loyal. Like, it's not clear to me that there's anything in the progressive world that is different than just your loyal soldier Democrat. And that's, I think, the core of it. It's like, you have to define what you want. And I don't see a coherent definition of what people want, where their values are. So
is it possible to make that? Is it possible to make that critique? Because I think that it's perfectly fair, and I agree with you and Jimmy in your frustration with the fact that they're not going far enough, and they're not.
But that's not the critique.
Wait, hold on. Let Bree.
Okay, but
I also think it is overly simplistic to pretend that they are identical. That there is no difference between them and mainstream Democrats. And I think it would be an easier conversation for a lot of people to absorb and to agree with you if we said a little bit more.
Here's what's fascinating. Bree is arguing that there are Democrats who are to the left of mainstream Democrats who are trying to push it. Like, she's arguing that there's a substantive difference between an AOC and, let's say, like a Richie Neal. And Jimmy doesn't even get. He's so bad at listening. He doesn't even get that she's arguing against his proposition that they're all the same.
He's busy eating. I am.
He's having a sandwich.
I'm super hungry now, but
But Stoller's point, I think, is true. And I want to get your take on this, Nomi. I think Stoller's point is true insofar as I don't think the progressive, and he goes on to talk about this, like we've seen some changes in the Progressive Caucus just in the past week where Jay Apollo is now, they don't have dual leadership. Ilhan Omar is now sort of, I guess, the whip, and Katie Porter has been brought in number 2 in the progressive, and they put out a statement. It's a very nebulous statement. We're making it more member oriented, right? Which I take to mean, and we know the criticism, AOC came on this program and said, the Progressive Caucus doesn't necessarily have the requirements that we would like to say. You don't just get this title by paying $4,000 dues. You got to actually have, there has to be an ideological, basically, hurdle for you to cross, essentially, to get the label. And my sense is that's they're starting to work on that. And I think that is a necessary step before you get to we want X, Y, and Z, both from a structural procedure standpoint and then from a programmatic standpoint. And that's what we're going for. And this is our 1, 2, 3, 5-year plan to achieve these goals. And I think he's right. We don't have that articulation. And partly because, Nomi, like what you say, that there isn't a movement leader or movement leaders or even institutions that are doing that. Like we're seeing it a little bit with some of the electoral institutions, maybe.
This is the key. This is the key.
But we're not quite seeing it in terms of I don't know.
Well, this is, I mean, with all due respect to the movement of the last 5 years, there have been some electoral-based institutions that have obviously had great gains, getting, 6 or 7 new members to Congress that are going to join that Progressive Caucus and, hopefully vote with the Progressive Caucus 95% of the time. But let's keep in mind how many of those Progressive Caucus members, including our most progressive members, voted for the military budget. We have to keep what are the set of standards that we stand by at this moment? That's just one argument. There's also this labor caucus that they've built out where Mark Pocan is leading that too. I'm not really sure if that means there's multiple approaches or if it's dividing things up. I'm not really sure, how those two are going to interact with each other internally. But if your energy in a moment of crisis, which I have to keep saying over and over, right? In a moment of crisis where we're going to have potentially tens of millions of evictions, if all of your energy is on process, and I am a process queen, right? There's a time for focusing on massive reforms to process, and there's a time for pressuring urgency. And so my perspective on this, as I've said it over and over, is the only pressure that you can make on any of these institutional players, including Nancy Pelosi, with exception to maybe some blue dogs that just don't care, or former blue dogs or whatever they're called now, is through labor. And so we as a movement, I think the only path forward is pressuring certain labor leaders to join the Sarah Nelsons. So, and pressuring the Sarah Nelsons and the CWAs and the nurses unions to pressure the Randy Weingardens to represent her membership so that you go forward and through the unions externally, not inside, because we don't know what's going on inside, but externally, bringing the public in with you to fight for some sort of real relief package, to fight for some sort of preventative measures when it comes to evictions beyond a moratorium, to fight for eventually Medicare for all, because, Emma's right, that's not going to be passed on day one. It's just not where all of our leverage is. The leverage, like I said, is this moment. They have to respond to this crisis. And if we're only focusing on institutional reforms right now, we're in a lot of trouble. And so Jimmy Dore, yes, voices on the outside, organizations, private organizations that focus on electoral politics, super important that they're making calls and sending out petitions and sending out emails. But Democratic lawmakers only always respond to labor. That's a better way of saying it. Sometimes they respond to electoral groups, not always. In this moment, it is labor.
So how do we pressure labor unions to do this? I mean, that is, I mean, I'm a member of SAG.
SAG's going to lead the way, guys.
I mean, they've gotten a little bit more. I've noticed over the years they've gotten a little bit more aggressive and leaned into sort of the politics a little bit. But obviously they're not the vanguard. But how do we pressure labor unions when we're not a member of those unions.
Well, I mean, raising these conversations, starting to have these conversations. If you're not a member, it doesn't mean that you don't support, and you can obviously advocate for the teachers union president to reflect the members' needs at this time of crisis. But there is membership, and granted, obviously, unions are way weaker than they've really ever been. But this is the cause of the moment. So, I mean, the way that I look at it, and this is like a great, maybe you should have Jane McAlevey on soon to sort of power map this, but starting with our allies in the labor movement. Sarah Nelson is a great ally. NNU is obviously very far left. The teachers' membership is definitely left. And I think Randy Weigard, I think she has the best interest in mind, but she's still a political player. The postal workers, Ken Diamondstein, like these are people who are on our side. And if they're responding to us, and I'm not us here, but the movement, which I think they do. I think they respond to the movement, not just their membership. The pressure together to get the AFL-CIO president, Richard Trumka, to actually come forward publicly. There's got to be public pressure as well as that internal pressure. And I'm not the leader on that, but this is my only, clearly I'm not the expert on this, but this is my only way of seeing change. Because at the end of the day, like, who is Pramila Jayapal going to respond to? Jimmy Dore or 5 union leaders?
Right. Well, it's interesting. We'll obviously continue this conversation probably for, I don't know, years.
The end of time.
Years.
We should just note that Jimmy also had a falling out, and they patched it up with David Sirota on his show, where Sirota had to return and tell Jimmy to stop misrepresenting me to the point where I have to return to your show because I want to go play with my kids. So, yeah, I don't know. Not really great at keeping the left together, unified. So,
well, I mean, it's as long as he's got his crew going. I mean,
we're going to see it on Twitter, guys, a little bit later. Can't wait.
I am disappointed in a lot of other progressive hosts I respect not calling this what it is. Naomi alluded to it earlier, but
we just turned on the phone machine, ladies and gentlemen. So you can call in and talk about this. We should probably go over what's in the relief package, because this is starting to look like we're going to get one half of it. Now, this is also really, just stunning to me. And this is a massive failure for Nancy Pelosi, only because, and I'm just assessing it by her terms, right? Like, she promised we're going to get city and state funding.
We're going to get that. She characterizes it, though, because now Biden's going to be in office and there's a vaccine. The answer to our prayers, as she said. So substantively, if the bill is less, more than half of what she initially was turned down from Mnuchin and Trump, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because now.
But it's not. The fact is, it's not. And there's no city and state. It's what's happening is, and we had mentioned this, and this has been coming down, they're going to separate the two bills, right? So you're going to get a $760 million bill that is going to provide $300 billion in small business relief. That, presumably is like another paycheck protection round. There's going to be 16 weeks of unemployment benefits. We should say there's going to be a 16-week extension in base unemployment. So what happens, states give you unemployment money that comes from the unemployment fund. The federal government back in March gave an extra $600 a week, which was a good benefit and kept a lot of people, and actually ended up like taking some people out of poverty because they were actually making a living wage at that point with the extra $600.
God forbid.
This time around, there's going to be a 16-week extension. So those 12 million people presumably will not run out of unemployment insurance in December 26th. They will go 16 weeks, I guess, to close to April. Let's call it April 1st. Maybe it's April 10th. I don't know. And in addition, during those 16 weeks, you will get an extra $300 per week. $300 billion for paycheck protection for those businesses that are, like on the verge. Although I think a lot of those businesses have they're gone.
Yeah.
And there was extra money in the paycheck protection in the last round. like there was money left over because
there's 500 million or billion left over that's supposed to be going towards this bill as well. So it's
that from the CARES Act, broadly speaking,
it's a fraction of what is necessary. They could go bigger, and I mean, really, it's $200 billion because all of the rest of the money is from before.
$82 billion for schools, $13 billion in emergency food assistance, $25 billion in rental assistance, $35 billion, and I will get back to that. $35 billion in healthcare providers, $13 billion for farmers, ranchers, growers, and fisheries. The bill will have an extension of the eviction moratorium until January 31st. The theory is that once Biden's in office, he can do that unilaterally through, I'm not exactly sure, but some type of executive action. I don't know if he will or if that's, but.
And then some of that rental assistance will have kicked in as well.
And they hope that the $25 billion in rental assistance will also alleviate some pressure by then. And that's it in that one. And then the other bill is about $160 billion worth of city and state aid that comes with a retrospective liability. So, and undercuts a lot of existing labor protections, statutory labor protections that exist,
which Trump already has aggressively undercut.
So perfect area where labor could organize like a much bigger, movement around. It's nuanced. It's a little processy and legal, but actually, Sam, do you know, or Emma, do you know which businesses are protected? Is there any sort of distinguishing, is it small businesses, only big business? Is it ever business? How does that?
It just seems to be a corporate liability, period, end of story. To the extent that we have any details on it, I don't see anything.
But it's also protecting your mom and pop shop from a lawsuit. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I love the small businesses being actually big business.
So there is, by Nancy Pelosi's own standards, that's and people should understand this state, and it's very easy to say, state and municipalities. Okay, well, whatever. That means massive layoffs by states, and you want to look back at the recovery from the recession that Reagan had, that happened right before Clinton came in, that George Bush had. There is one feature in the recovery that is identical, although Reagan's was even larger, and that is a massive hiring by states and cities. They expanded the government workers grows, and that's how you recover from these recessions. The reason why it was anemic under Obama was because that did not grow, period. And so without that funding, and they're signing off for whatever reason, it's just inexplicable to me why you would sign off on a fiscal budget, a budget that would take you to next October when you could be 3 weeks away from having a Democratic Senate. Like the one crack at this you get is if you get that Democratic Senate. Now, maybe the idea is like, if we get a Democratic Senate, we can do some type of reconciliation bill for a bigger stimulus. I don't know. But without city and state, when they're contracting and they're hurting, they're losing. Remember, a lot of tax revenue is being lost this year, obviously, because of sales taxes, because of, people living outside the cities or whatever it is, or less economic activity, et cetera, et cetera. States and cities are hurting for cash. They're going to lay people off. It's going to ruin services. There's going to be a ripple effect. It's really going to be super ugly. And
they need this funding for adequate vaccine distribution too.
I think there's some in this for that. I think there is.
They may split the baby here, but regardless, it's at minimum what you're discussing. There's still, reporting out there.
$16 billion for testing, tracing, and vaccine development and distribution.
Do they? I read this story about Puerto Rico not having enough vaccines for the island specifically, but I'm very curious, like, how is it like a bidding war like it was?
I don't know how they're handling that. I mean, I don't know actually how that's being distributed across the country. I don't know. I mean, presumably the vaccine, people are getting vaccinated in New York now. I mean, people are getting vaccinated, I think, all around the country. And I would imagine it is now first going to healthcare workers, and then it's nursing home residents. And those are fixed numbers, right? I mean, so you could theoretically, I would imagine at one point that was happening 3 months ago is that somebody's putting in a request into the federal government, and that's how they determine these figures. And then, of course, there's a bunch that's being set aside for Donald Trump's friends, I would imagine. And so I don't know that process, but you need to have technicians to administer the vaccine, and
you need to have enough vaccines.
And you need to have enough vaccines. I mean, that's a separate
40
issue.
million doses by the end of the year. That means 20 million people vaccinated. But that's what Trump is saying, the warp speed people. So I doubt it would be 20 million by the end of the year anyway.
It's unlikely, but no, we got 15 days. No, that ain't happening.
Oh my God, we have 15 days. Geez, I didn't even register that in my mind.
I know it. It's crazy.
And the other thing that's concerning is, like, I know that the CDC has been talking about this, but how is it like you make sure people, since it's going to be this slow roll of vaccines, making sure people still wear their masks? Because if everyone just stops wearing their masks because they think the vaccine's coming out, I'm really concerned actually about the next year. I feel like not adequately.
Well, I think what we're about. My prediction is that we're going to be in lockdown, at least in New York, within a month. I think we're going to be in lockdown. I think there's going to be a lot of places that are going to lock down between January and February for a 3 or 4 week period, and to get over like that major hump, flatten that curve, because you're going to have hospitals that are going to be overrun, and then I think things are going to ease after that. And I think, there's nothing like having hospitals overrun and seeing that type of like horror to make people take it seriously. Let's go to the phones for a sec. Calling from a 312 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Queens, New York. My name is Diego.
Diego?
That's right. Can you hear me okay, Sam?
Yes. Thanks for the call. What's you calling from Queens?
I'm calling from Queens, most diverse borough in the world.
Okay. Wait. Hold on for a second.
Jimmy.
Are you calling you're calling from a 312 area code, right?
Yeah, I lived in Chicago, went to school in Chicago when people got their cell phones.
You have two guys on.
I got two guys from 312 on. What's your what's the last number on your phone?
On mine, it's 5.
Okay. All right. So here we go. All right. So Diego, go. What's on your mind?
All right. I'm thinking a lot about Jimmy. I want you guys to maybe dissuade me from an idea that I've been really mulling over ever since Bernie dropped out and Jimmy had a very fiery, nasty appearance on the Useful Idiots podcast. I got struck with this idea. And I don't want to turn this into a soliloquy, but I feel like when you're 40 something, you start asking, like, what is worth changing and what can you just accept and just deal with? And I think that America is not really ready for an articulate, intelligent, person who listens on the left. I think that person is doomed to failure. And I think we should get behind Jimmy Dore for president in 2024 because he's a madman and an idiot. And I think that, like, people respond to that theater much more than they respond to politics these days. What do you guys think?
If he's our madman, that's all that matters.
I appreciate the call. That's an interesting idea. We'll get I don't know if it's as lucrative as he wants. All right, let's try this again. 312 area code. The other 312, as we call it.
This is Aaron in Chicago.
Hello, Aaron in Chicago. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to call in and thank you guys for that clip that you played last Tuesday of the Cornell PhD student explaining the mRNA vaccine. I shared that around with a couple of people, including my mom, who's a nurse down in Texas, and now convinced her that she should sign up for the vaccine. Her hospital asked her if she was interested in it, and she wasn't at first because she has friends who are on Parler sending her all this information talking about anti-vaccine and stuff. But that clip did a great job of explaining, and she's now on board.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm really, I mean, look, I can understand why people are skeptical. But people should remember we are now for at least 4 months out now from, depending on which one you're talking about, 30,000 or 15,000 per vaccine having been inoculated at least 4 months out in these tests. In Britain, I don't know how many tens of thousands, maybe have been inoculated since December 8th. I just read a piece today that I found encouraging, which was that in the Moderna trial, 30,000 people, 15,000 get the inoculation, 15,000 don't. There were 3 cases of palsy in the face. I can't remember what the name of that specific palsy is.
Bell's palsy.
Yes, Bell's palsy. And they're being they're watching it very closely. But that number, and there was one case in the other 15,000 who got the placebo, but the number of 4 people getting Bell's palsy out of 30,000 apparently is not inconsistent with what you see in the general population. And I think 2 of them have already resolved. But just the idea that they're on top of that, and we hear that, leads me to believe that we're hearing what could be caveats about it. And I don't think that one is, but the fact that it's public is encouraging. And I found that encouraging. So, but yeah, I appreciate the call. People should send that clip around.
I did have a question for you. Have you heard or seen anything about Biden potentially using the Defense Production Act to produce it more instead of, arguing about the 100 million doses from Pfizer that we ordered and, we didn't order more? I don't know what else can be done to produce it quickly and get it out to more people.
That's a good question. I haven't. I imagine I would be shocked if somebody's not looking at this. I think the real question is there capacity? Can you, and I don't know the answer to this question at all. Can you take an existing infrastructure that is not dedicated towards developing vaccines or towards producing vaccines and essentially appropriate it and have them produce vaccines? We had distilleries doing the hand stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's different for mass production at a Ford plant.
Right? Yeah, I don't know.
What were they doing?
They did ventilators.
I guess that is more analogous.
Yes, I just don't know. So that's a good question, but I would be shocked if they're not looking at it, because if I'm Joe Biden, the thing I want to do is basically say hey, boom,
I'm in office and everything's better. You're all getting vaccinated.
Yeah. Appreciate the call. This just breaking. The good news, Rahm Emanuel not named as transport secretary.
Jesus.
Pete Buttigieg named transport secretary.
He took that? I was surprised.
I think they ran out of stuff. I think he was like, being in China, I don't think it's going to give me a career. And I think they had to tell him.
And he doesn't know Mandarin. He was caught.
I think they had to tell him it's not that much work, dude. And he was like, oh, okay, all right. He's a consultant.
Right. Can I run the CIA and do transportation at the same time? I don't have to be the CIA.
He's a consultant. They don't. The one thing that they learned very early is don't get a job. Be a consultant.
Yeah, and consultants travel all the time, so he knows a lot about transportation.
I gotta think that, like, I gotta think that, I mean, like, I'm not a big Pete Buttigieg fan, but I gotta think that, like, Joe Biden likes trains. He's going to tell him, do trains, and Buttigieg is going to go, okay. And he's going to look down to like the career guy who's in the thing and go like, do trains. I'm going to go out and do a speech somewhere. That's basically it. I mean, that's what he's going to do.
I don't know if you know this, but Joe Biden used to ride the Amtrak to work.
What?
Okay, my theory is this. Pete Buttigieg he has a secret plot to listen in on every single conversation from New York to DC on the Acela. And that's his CIA. Like, that's the in there. All about that.
Yeah, transportation's important for spies. I mean, this is Pete Buttigieg's record on South Bend, transportation. We got some sculptures installed around the roundabouts.
Oh, there you go.
Good for him. Big time.
Let's do a little... Let's do a couple of these clips. Here is, this is this dynamic is still going on in Georgia. And, again, this is the most consequential thing I think that is that could happen over the next couple of weeks, although the stimulus, obviously, here's Kelly Loeffler trying desperately to explain why voters in Georgia should not trust the general election that just passed, but trust the runoffs. This is like a tough...
I love this needle threading.
We've heard from the president, who said that the election was stolen from him, that it was rigged in November. So for the people of Georgia who are thinking about early voting, what can you say to them? They've heard the election was rigged in November, so why vote now?
Well, Steve, great question, because we've built a robust organization to make sure that every legal vote is counted and every illegal vote is thrown out.
So what's different now than it was in November, where it's no longer rigged?
Yeah, so we're in the courts right now asking for better signature verification processes, a bipartisan verification, to have consistent verification county to county, as well as the addition of 4,000 poll watchers. We also have a statewide organization getting out the vote, 1,000 workers going across the state, backed by 40,000 volunteers. If we vote, we will win. If we don't vote, we will lose the country. We are the firewall to socialism. And you saw in my debate last week, I'm running against the most radically liberal candidate that has ever run for the Senate. He's someone that would defund the police. He refused to renounce socialism. We have to push back against this radical agenda of the left, and it's up to Georgia voters to do that.
Senator, I grew up in South Carolina, and I always knew that Georgia was so.
Yeah.
There you go.
She
was so right below the state I grew up in.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in South Carolina. I always knew Georgia was so important. Is that what she was about to say? I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't feel that way about South Dakota, just for the record.
Also, yeah, so she's trying to claim that Warnock is way to the left of like Bernie Sanders.
Well, she's the most radical person ever to run for the Senate. She is the type of incumbent who could have only been appointed to the Senate. Like, I mean, like honestly, I just don't like if she was not the incumbent. Damn.
She makes Martha McSally look like she's JFK.
Honestly, who put? I mean, did they put her in? Did they appoint her because they want to set somebody else up to win in the Republican primary?
They appointed her because she donated money to them and is fabulously rich. That's why they appointed her.
Can't you? Doesn't she have enough money that she could get like some type of like a charisma transplant or something to that effect? Like, can't you buy something like that?
You can't, unfortunately, but you can buy elections, which is what she's attempting to do. I cannot believe, that she's... And what's so annoying about her, too, is that this is clearly not something she's passionate about in any way, shape, or form. Like, there are some Republicans who get themselves to believe in the ideology. There's nothing about her run that speaks to her except for her own vanity project. And then maybe she'll get a little lucky and she'll do some insider trading and make herself a little more wealthy. Like the fact that it's such a naked open, I'm a bored rich lady, so maybe I'll buy this Senate seat. That's what's more off-putting to me than anything.
What happened to those like foundations they used to start where they just, meet up on Wednesdays and have like drunk brunches? Just stick to
do
that.
Like Daughters of the American Revolution or whatever the hell that is.
There's no doubt that she was
endorsed by them.
The secret one.
Yeah, be a real housewife of Atlanta. I'm sure they're casting. I mean, seriously, just throw wine at each other. If you're this bored, don't completely, buy a Senate seat and use it to make a few extra million.
I don't know where.
How has nobody done it at Real Housewives of the Republican Party? Like, seriously.
They're doing Real Housewives of Salt Lake City right now, which is basically that.
I don't
say
know.
Real Housewives of Tuxedo Park.
I don't know where Warnock and Ossoff are on the $1,200 checks. But here is an interesting...
Ossoff's been advocating for it a lot.
He has. Yeah. I would imagine that Warnock has too. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Here is a local Atlanta news station, and this is interesting. Let's play this Fox 5 Atlanta clip.
To push the turnout. The Justice Democrats, Lori, and other progressive groups sent this memo out this week saying Democrats should make the Georgia Senate runoffs a direct referendum on a $1,200 direct check to Americans, meaning if checks are not included in the next relief bill passed by Congress, it should be the, quote, central issue in the Georgia Senate runoffs. Do you agree that that could be a strategy we'll see in the coming days for Democrats?
That is a strategy for Democrats, but because it speaks to the Democratic base, and many of the voters right now are really hurting in terms of the economy and losing jobs, and especially the small business owners. It's an interesting strategy, but Courtney, I know you've paid attention to the negotiations on Capitol Hill, and what Republicans are really hesitant about is kind of essentially what amounts to a bailout for states like New York and states like California and some cities. And I think Senators Perdue and Loeffler would say, you know what, Georgia has been fiscally responsible, so why should Georgia taxpayers and taxes, why should they go to pay for states that have not been fiscally responsible?
All right, January 5th coming up in just a minute.
Wow.
Rick Scott took out an op-ed in the National Review saying just that we shouldn't do state and local funding because it's bailing out the poorly run Democratic states.
Why don't everyone in the news media have just their email boxes slammed with the data that shows where federal tax dollars come from and go? I mean, I get the idea that that's not the point of this, that just because New York pays more that it takes out in terms of getting a return on the dollar, that we don't necessarily want to promote that. But if this is being weaponized, you got to fight back against it. And the reality is, I mean, Matt, go see if you can find one of those. I mean, for every, dollar that New York State, I think, pays in federal taxes, they get back something like, I don't know if it's like 95 cents or something to that effect. The Democratic states pay, largely speaking, I don't think it's one-to-one, but the blue states pay for the red states.
Yeah. But I mean, that gets in the way of the talking point. They tried this in Kansas.
Well, that's my point. They should get in the way of the talking point.
You think Sinclair Media is really going to be inspired to do that?
Why is the leader of the Democratic Party, which is now inexplicably Joe Biden, or even, whatever, I'll pick Nancy Pelosi here. Why are they not making it a referendum on $1,200 checks? I mean, I understand why Pelosi's not doing it and why Biden's doing it. He wants any bill whatsoever, doesn't really care what's in it, doesn't care if it's an empty can of aerosol. I don't really know. But that would be a wonderful way for the Democrats to market themselves. We're the party of $1,200 checks. Instead, Josh Hawley is taking that mantle alongside Bernie Sanders in the Senate.
I think this is about, just as we on the left have to pick what we're leveraging at this moment in this time. I think that Biden, I don't agree with it, obviously. He seems to be putting all of his energy into China right now and building some sort of bipartisan coalition when it comes up to, normalizing whatever relationships with China again. And God forbid that they sacrifice that for the $1,200 checks that should be going out to every single American.
You know what Americans don't care about right now is America's relationship with China.
Emma, you are, I mean, what planet are you on?
Can I also
wake
say
up every morning thinking about that.
The only amendment that I would make to that is right now. I would say they just don't. Period.
Right,
Like,
right.
It's not
Well,
even right now. That's the only.
Yeah. Okay, I got what you're
It is
saying.
not temporally constrained. Here, put that back up,
Tell
Matt.
Steve Bannon that.
Let's look this up. I mean, I think there's reasons to be, to be interested in it, but it's just the facts. All right, yeah. Can you zoom in on that, Matt, a little bit? There you go. There you go. Keep going. Keep going. Can't see it. All right. So presumably, like, what does it work here? Like the,
I've got another one too here, Brendan. If you want to,
Okay.
yeah. And North Dakota's doing way better than South Dakota because of oil wealth. But if you want to stop sharing, Brendan, here's this one by. It's just a straighter line graph. States by return on taxpayer investment. And I'm not sure which. This is from an Atlantic piece. I can't tell exactly how old the state is, but the general gist is, red states are generally.
So we can see it a little better.
Let's see here.
There we go. South Carolina. Oh, it seems to get a very good investment on its taxpayer investment. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom here.
North Dakota not looking so hot at the top there, Matt.
So there it is. Yeah. Delaware, Minnesota, Illinois, Nebraska, Ohio, Kansas, New York State, Colorado, Utah, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, California. That's the cutoff. Those are states. Scroll down a little bit more so I can just note down. See that? That's the $1 line. If that blue line is below $1, that means that for every dollar they give, they get actually a little bit less back. And there is one. Nebraska is a red state. Ohio, I think, also voted red. Kansas, Utah, Oklahoma, Wyoming. These are places that don't have a lot of things.
This is evidence for Minnesota nice.
California, Massachusetts, New York are on that list.
Also, Delaware should be that low because it's all a corporate tax haven.
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
Yeah,
Joe
I mean,
Biden.
a lot of this is just wealthier states and where there are people who are richer in them. And so we're not shaming the individuals in those states, but
that's why I'm
shaming the
hesitant to
talking
bring it
point.
up. But if this is going to be a talking point, it's a bad talking point.
Minnesota was second to last. Is that what it was?
Pretty close.
Odd one.
Yep.
Here is Glenn Beck and that lunatic Alan West. Do people remember that dude?
And that sane guy, Glenn Beck.
Yep. Here they're making a vow. We're not going to be as bad as the progressives.
So, Alan, let me ask you a difficult question. Say all of these things fail, and on the 20th of January, or whatever it is, the Joe Biden is sworn in, and that's just the ruling of the courts and the system and the legislatures and all of that.
The voters.
What is it going to take to get people to come back into the fold and not split apart?
Well, I think when you just said the ruling of the courts, first and foremost, the courts need to hear the people. And if the courts refuse to hear the people, then you're going to have an issue come January the 20th. And we cannot live in a country where every single time there is a Republican that is elected. George W. Bush, he's illegitimate. When Donald Trump is elected, he's illegitimate. Let's resist him. When Amy Coney Barrett is brought onto the Supreme Court by constitutional process, she's illegitimate. Brett Kavanaugh is illegitimate. We cannot have progressive socialists that believe that they can rule by absolutism and totalitarianism, and everything that doesn't agree with them is illegitimate. So I think that the first and foremost, the American people need to go by the electoral process, the ballot process. But if you start to have mandates, edicts, orders, and decrees that are handed down, such as red flag laws, such as mandatory gun buybacks, these things, I believe that the American people have a right to say no.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Thanks for your stand and your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Just a reminder, George Bush became president because the Supreme Court intervened in a way that no legal expert would have ever predicted that they would over miscounts in Florida, in a place where Patrick Buchanan got tens of thousands of votes from older Jewish residents. I will remind you that Patrick Buchanan, I don't know if he's ever said it publicly, but my understanding is not a big Jew guy. And so put aside the entire Brooks Brothers riot and the shutting down of the counting and all that. Just like, it's quite clear that he won in Florida because of a ballot that was constructed poorly. Now, them are the breaks, I guess, but all those things added to his delegitimacy. Donald Trump
lost the election.
Lost the election in terms of numbers. I mean, he won the Electoral College.
You're talking about
his first time round, and had Supreme Court picks because of an unprecedented move by the Republicans in the Senate. So it's not just like socialist progressives or progressive socialists or whatever he's calling half the country.
I'm curious, though, why do all conservative pundits use that panning shot? Ben Shapiro
the tracking
does it.
shot?
Oh, the one, yeah.
They hire those people.
It's like they need movement.
We're like doing a showbiz.
Right.
We're in show business. Get the dolly out. We're in show business. I want to see a jib on this set.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't Glenn Beck, didn't he own their studios, the first studios? So that's probably why, like, some of them rent the same studios from him.
Oh, that could be it.
The weirder shot was the plumber shot that they did for about 30 seconds at the end of his answer there, where it was just behind Glenn Beck for
Well, no, Shapiro
20
does
seconds.
too. I think Alex Jones does a little bit. Yeah, what is that? That
It's
looks
like 40 seconds of just behind Glenn Beck.
That's Sirius XM, though? I think it might be like...
No, he's in Texas. He's got his own like underground bunker studio.
It's like they need to distract their audience from their words by moving things around so you don't think too hard about what we're saying.
Well, it also looks more professional, and it gives them sort of like a credibility. I mean, people react to that visual vernacular, you know?
I don't know if the panning shot looks more credible, but
I don't know. People, you know, when the static.
If you could choose, would you want a panning shot of you?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here in front of like a European pharmacy backdrop, essentially, just talking to a microphone, like static. No, I mean, no, my sensibility is a little bit more static, locked off.
It's basically just what cable news is. It's like when you go to Fox or whatever these places, they all have the Fox in particular has like 9,000 lights and cameras coming at you from every angle. It's just, you know, they're all trying to be in the mimic cable news. That's it.
You know, and there's like these, Glenn Beck famously created an entire studio that looked just like the Oval Office because there's such a theme of like intrigue, and I'm in a spy movie and I'm a hero, and it all sort of like, it all sort of dovetails with like, you know, sort of like their gun fantasies about how, and here is Dan Crenshaw's second, I haven't seen this one yet.
I haven't either. So we have
he released another like Avengers style, how he's going in to save Georgia. And I mean, how are you going in to save Georgia? You spent all your time shooting these productions, but you got like, I gave my last $20 to Dan Crenshaw because I really want him to be able to make another like masturbatory cartoon, where he gets to pretend like he's a superhero.
Yeah, I maxed out and paid for half a camera.
Exactly.
Who are his media consultants?
The American story is one of true exceptionalism. It's built on the greatest ideas in history. This victory tonight, it's about you. It's about defining those. Sorry, folks. I'll be right back.
What do we got? Well, it's not over in Georgia. Senate races went to a runoff.
What are we up against?
You'll never believe this.
Far-left activists are attempting to gain full and total control of the U.S. government.
That we secure a Democratic Senate majority so that we don't have to negotiate in that way.
Should these Senate seats be lost, all will be lost.
You supported the Green New Deal. You supported Medicare for all.
Pause it for 1 second. Why is the Dispatch British?
Well, he's a 007.
Yeah, it's the Judi Dench character in the new James Bond movies.
But James Bond is British.
Well,
Dan Crenshaw.
Dan Crenshaw wasn't born in America, right? Wasn't he born in like Colombia or something?
Well, then why is MI6? Why is this guy? Is this guy a foreign spy?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Lynn Wood? I think Lynn Wood.
He was born in Scotland, actually.
All right, continue.
Crenshaw was?
Yeah, I think the whole thing is just super
Sounds
suspicious.
like he's a Manchurian candidate in Congress.
Yeah.
Your mission will be to rally support across Georgia behind these American patriots, Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. They must win.
What's our situation on the ground?
We have two patriots down there, Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue. Great fighters with a great message.
They just need a little backup.
Look at these dudes.
Last question. Who do you want to bring?
Bring everyone.
You go back and get those guys.
Oh, man, this is not shooting!
Control, what's the situation at the LZ?
Good evening, sir. Rather lovely form, if I may say so. But we do have a small problem at the landing zone. So-called anti-fascists, an ironic term given their propensity to, well, act like fascists, are patrolling the area. Recommend we shift north 3 kilometers. How does that sound?
Negative. I want to say hello to the greeting party. What's the bearing?
Always one for a bit of drama. 90 degrees from your current heading. Be well, sir.
Man, where is this guy? Yeah, dude, it's gonna be dark soon.
Those are Antifa guys.
Where is that pirate?
Antifa protesting.
Oh, pirate. I don't even know why I'm so angry, you know?
Oh, the news told us to be.
I don't even know why I'm so scared of Antifa.
Dude, we know it's like the guy who comes back from vacation. They went skydiving. You want to watch the video? They put music to it. No one wants to watch that, but he just put it in an ad. And wait for him to make it about himself. He's like Trump. Doesn't no one wants to talk about Loeffler and Perdue? They just want to make it about themselves.
Well, they're horrible candidates. Wait, I have a question. Real quick. Can we go back to just that last bit where it says the paid for by? Can you put it up on screen? Show. Who is it paid for? Not authorized by any. Spirit of 76 pack. What is that?
I'm gonna look it up.
That is a good question. Oh wait, there's a contact there. We should call it. Maybe we can all get a
that number up on screen.
It's his leadership package.
Oh, it's his leadership pack.
Yeah.
There is a quality. I mean, like that video is like, it reminds me of those pictures where Trump is like, they put Trump on like some type of like really muscular body and they paint like him like as like some type of
like a hippogriff.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that there is this whole attempt in the Republican Party. You can see it. Like I saw this the other day. Lynn Cheney was like mocking Rand Paul for being 5'3". And she said, like, I'm 5'3" and he's 5'3". Like, you see all of these guys trying to appeal to Trump voters by doing this kind of stuff that just seems so ham-fisted. It's going to be interesting to see if this works out. Now, Crenshaw, like, you know, they love this.
Oh,
they love this.
I mean,
like,
at least Crenshaw's trying to market himself. I mean, Republican voters, they eat this up. This is what they think masculinity looks like.
They call themselves Antifa, which is ironic because they're more like Fa.
And I love how they got the lady to compliment him twice on his form. And then also his like daring attitude. Oh, Dan.
He reminds me. This is the Joe Rogan voter. This is like the people who eat meat all day and like grow their beards out and have distilleries. No offense to anybody who has a distillery, but I mean that's the future of the Republican Party. Yeah, they all have. I mean, I watch these like small business
Or like
shows.
distilleries at least.
Or like them.
I like IPAs, but I'm not like that. I'm a good beer drinker.
Troop coffee.
Fruit coffee?
Troop, like veteran coffee companies.
Exactly.
Exploiting
Yes.
people in Central America.
That's them.
It's also weird. What happened to his his parachute? Did he let go? Like, did he like somehow detach himself from his parachute, like 5 feet above the, and those
turn into a bald eagle.
And this is the other thing that nobody talks about, but the Antifa people are so bad at using binoculars. Like, how do you not see the guy come in?
They're just
he has to be in front, right?
Field.
He lands on the hood, and that is one of the things that the Antifa people really don't take enough. Like, they don't just they have to. When you're sitting there with the binoculars, you got to look up at the sky when the people are parachuting down. It's just.
Well, because they had the face
They don't
masks
take
on.
enough
It's just too
criticism.
much to do at once.
Yeah, I mean it's like that famous scene in Django Unchained where the KKK members can't see out of their hoods because their wife cut them up wrong. It's just the Antifa people. They need better costume designers. Thank you, Dan.
This was very convenient of Lindsey Graham to do our analysis for us in this video, where he makes it very clear. And he's echoing Donald Trump here. I think Donald Trump said this in the past. He said it in terms of the Republican Party, but Lindsey Graham is twisting it a little bit to make it about conservatism. The biggest dangers to conservatism is the idea, essentially, that that basically people would not get disinformation and would be able to vote.
A light on the problem with mail-in voting. There's two threats to conservatism: mass mail-in voting, unverified, and social media companies, unregulated, unable to be sued when they take down the content of conservatives. Social media companies and mail-in voting will destroy conservatism if we don't push back.
Parler, Rumble. There you go. All right. Thank you, Senator.
Parler Rumble?
Rumble must be another social media company that I'm sure Sean Hannity has a part of, and is like they all, right? Like they all probably own a piece of that. It's really smart, actually, in a way that they're all promoting that. But what Graham seems to be talking about there is the idea that you could get sued for deplatforming people. I like the idea that we would have that type of ability to action, you know, how terms of service are for websites and for, why not, physical stores too, for that matter, right? Like, hey, I want you guys to carry Fresca and you don't. And therefore, I'm going to sue you because I like Fresca. But it's almost impossible to find anywhere.
Talk about liberal entitlement.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's an interesting twist on that 230 debate, which I think is going to become very prominent in the next couple of months, is my guess. That's Section 230. But there it is, Lindsey Graham laying it out. We're going to need more disinformation, and we're going to need to inhibit people's ability to vote.
I love how previously respectable Republicans, or perceived to be, are now just saying those things out loud. Now, not that it makes a difference because Trump was the candidate of saying everything that was latent out loud, but I mean, it is useful, I guess, for historical record purposes that this is where these guys stood.
He still wants to break up the big tech. That's what I don't.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll be supportive of what was Elizabeth Warren's push to do that. I'm sure Lindsey Graham is all on board for the breaking up of Facebook and Twitter and all those things.
That's the interesting part. It's like, where are the lines with his libertarianism? How can you be pro-business and then at the same time and not want people to be deplatformed, but at the same time want to break up big tech?
Does he actually want to?
Well, he's into. I mean, at least in the past, he has because of the spying record. Whatever. It's all about privacy, right?
I'm just asking, just because I didn't want to get it wrong there, but I assumed it was more just a talking point that he could get, brownie points with the right for, and wasn't actually principled in wanting to do so. Which I watched the what was that movie, the Netflix documentary, The Social Experiment, was it? Yeah. And that convinced me even more how necessary it is to break up big tech.
Well, I think his whole goal is he just wants to start a misinformation campaign that he's actually 5'10", not 5'3". That's the goal here.
Wait, who's
no one will believe him otherwise?
One? Was it Rand Paul? You said?
I think so. I
really
think
is?
so.
I
think
no
that's
idea.
what Cheney said. I'm not sure about that, but here is calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, Sam. It's Kowalski in Nebraska.
Kowalski in Nebraska. What's on your mind?
A lot of snow, but shoot, I had something. A relevant joke.
Must have been frozen in the snow.
Damn, she's good. No, I was going to call and say that the whole Prairie Fire channel, I've started with it, and the first episode should be out, I think, Thursday or Friday.
What's the URL?
So,
YouTube.com/
Prairie Fire, as far as I mean, that's just the name of the channel, I guess.
You probably need to search it, and I don't think you can specify your URL until a bit later in the process. So just search up Prairie Fire for Kowalski there. Post it on YouTube or on Twitter and tag me to Kowalski.
Oh, that's a good idea. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm walking on thin ice, so I should probably go. You guys,
literally on thin ice?
It's starting to crack.
All right.
Where are you? Are you in a lake?
Kowalski is a terrible exponent of farm safety, I think.
Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Fuck you fucking asshole.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow, that was a
sorry. This is how I joke now.
It's Jimmy Dore. Got it.
Ronald Reagan doing his Jimmy Dore. Just got back from his Jimmy Dore comedy learning annex.
Yeah. Fuck you. And Emma, fuck you. And Nomiki, fuck you. Is Matt there too?
All of you guys. Matt and Brendan are on.
And you guys are a bunch of nerds. And anyways, I've been hanging out a lot over at TP's show. He's got over 1 million subs. There's fucking drinks. And I know my jokes aren't super PC or whatever, but I'm not going to get canceled over there. And that's what I love about just doing ollies on his half pipe with all the other subs and, getting drinks and doing the do. So anyways, have I established my dominance yet? I just want to make sure.
You gotta maybe be a little bit more aggressive, I think. I mean, with all due respect.
Okay.
There's some people who are just never going to get there, Ronald Reagan. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
hey, can I shit on lawyers for a second?
Sure.
All right. So I'm a lawyer, but one of the good ones.
Yeah, one of the good ones. Sure.
I think lawyers have the same problem as cops, which is that really, if the good cops existed and if they self-policed, if they were really interested in getting rid of the bad apples, then a lot of the problems would go away. And I have a lot of colleagues who are, well-respected, good people in the sort of regular everyday kind of way, who as a matter of practice and principle refuse to bring bar complaints against other attorneys, even if there's a case where, so I do immigration law, where an immigrant has been clearly wronged by their prior counsel. These attorneys will refer those cases out because as a matter of principle, they won't file a grievance against a colleague. And it's basically snitches get stitches in suits, right? It's the same sort of thing. And, we're not going to tell on each other, even though we're we have law degrees and we carry a briefcase or whatever. So I see this a lot in my little corner of the
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's just a question of, I think part of it is like they don't want the retribution down the road. Like if I start filing bar complaints, and not like frivolous bar complaints, but actual disciplinary action, they don't want that to come back on them. So I think they want there to be this sort of air of understanding that like I don't play the game that way. I mean, I think
the client do it?
End of the
I'm sorry. Just real quick. Yeah. Can't the client just do that without the lawyer doing it?
Well, in immigration law, like specifically, if you want to make a claim of ineffective assistance of your prior counsel, there's like a whole procedure for doing that. And it would involve the lawyer doing some of the legwork, like contacting the prior counsel and saying, we think you messed up this way. And so, not entirely, but I'm not sure exactly. I think it has a lot to do with that. They don't want it to come back on them, and they want, they want to be able to go to the parties or whatever and get along. So anyhow, that's a real problem. And I think that goes all the way up to the big players that you guys have been talking about. So anyways, fuck you guys. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Interesting. Ronald Reagan. Calling from a 412 area code. We'll take 2 more calls after this. Then we'll get out of here. 412. Got to be quick. Got to be quick.
Sam.
Who's
hey,
this?
Sean from Iowa. How you doing?
Sean from Iowa. What's on your mind?
Recently, the Iowa caucus autopsy was unveiled, and I wanted to call and talk about that for a moment. And I'm glad that Nomiki's here because she has some experience with dealing with the Democratic Party.
Go.
So the autopsy came out just the other day, and there was a good amount of information about how the DNC would regularly dip back in and mess up the procedure with the Iowa Democratic Party. Neither group is like clean in this. There's some real bad mismanagement that happened on both groups, but it was clear to me that in the reading of the 29-page report, no one had clear guidelines on who was actually in charge. So the DNC kept dipping its toe back in and saying that the Iowa Democratic Party wasn't ensuring cybersecurity enough. And so that delayed the unrolling of the app. Then the app wasn't rolled out. There was no training. And then the cybersecurity requirements on the DNC's end made it so it was very difficult to download, log into, and use. But at the end of the day, the app functioned properly. It's just that no one was trained or equipped to use it. So the whole issue with the Iowa caucuses is that a bunch of people who were supposed to be in charge pointed the finger at each other and didn't want to do the work.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a really healthy organization that's really functional.
The crazy thing is the Iowa party is not one of like it's actually a better party because they're so used to managing caucuses, which are way more difficult to manage. There's just like lots of logistics. And I mean, it's interesting you mentioned this because on the Reform Commission where we passed these reforms, there was a big fight like externally. I think I've mentioned this on the show before where no one was calling for caucuses to replace primaries, yet that was something that Neera Tanden and MSNBC were putting out there, like, which was verifiably fake and also not possible. But what they were trying to do was there's a lot of money to be made in primaries, like a lot more money to be made, and it's a lot easier to control them as a party, as a national party and as a state party. But when you have caucuses and it's a state that decides whether or not it's a primary or caucus state, and it's a bipartisan issue with the legislature. It has nothing to do with like the party decides in the state. So Iowa is a caucus state because the Iowa voters in the legislature decided that that's what they want to be. Now, doesn't mean that like all caucuses are the same. So all we could do in the Reform Commission was institute a set of reforms. And the reforms based on the last few caucuses were we have to be able, we didn't know how many people were showing up to caucus sites. None of this stuff was being written down, right? Tracked. I mean, some of it was being written down, but it wasn't being delivered to the public in any way for like future, assessments or understanding, like, is it going to come down to a coin toss or not? And so all we did in the Reform Commission was ask for, and so did the Iowa Democratic Party, by the way, was to ask for some form of, to push for some form of transparency and accountability if there were anything that went wrong. No one talked about an app. That is something that Tom Perez and the DNC literally just said, oh, we're going to use an app, when the traditional way of doing it is you just do it by hand like everybody else does. And it's very good. And call it in. Yep. And so they had to make money off of this. And then when it failed, they're like, oh, this is why caucuses suck and we should go to a primary. And by the way, caucuses are racist and you're all racist that support caucuses, even though people in those states are the ones who decide to do caucuses.
Appreciate the call. I mean, that is like, the classic, like, there was a guy at one point at Air America, somebody sort of fell into the CEO ship and he's like, my nephew does internet stuff, and maybe we should have him do an app. Like it wasn't, I don't think there were apps at that point, but it was like that classic sort of like, how can we make some cash here? Like, yeah, you can write it on paper and call in.
Not to mention the person running that app had a bad history, had no experience in this whatsoever. And then after all this, after she was completely blamed for it, they decided to move her to some other thing so she could make another, I don't know how much money. In the
240 area code. We got one more call after this. You got to be quick. Who's this? 240.
Quick. Were you doing Trump earlier?
Quick.
Was that? Yeah. Quick. Martha, come on.
240. Calling once.
Is this me?
Yes, it is. Quick.
Hi. Yeah, this is Damie from Florida. I was just wondering if you can clarify whether or not the caller Mike from PA was actually officially a part of the program. Because I was just watching the anniversary program and I don't think I saw him.
Officially part of the program?
Yes.
I don't even know what that means. You're officially part of the program.
Oh no, as a producer. That's what I mean.
Was he a producer on the program?
Yes.
I think he filled in at one point for Brendan. I think he helped us out.
Yeah, he did the news rundown when I was working on a pilot.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious. I was just getting to the anniversary show and I didn't see him being mentioned there. But
I mean, sadly, I left out probably a lot of people who've helped the show or worked on the show in the past, without a doubt. I mean, look, it's not so easy, buddy. It's not. This stuff doesn't do it. It's on its own. It's not like we have a show historian. But I appreciate the call. Good stuff.
All right, thank you. Keep doing what.
Okay, bye. And the final call of the day, I have no idea. Final call of the day. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Mike? Sorry, can you hear me, Sam?
Oh, boy. Yes. Is this Dave in Jamaica?
Yes, this is Dave from Jamaica. Sorry, I know you guys wanted to be quick, so I'm going to try and make it super quick. It's not really about Jimmy Dore. It's about the attitude, the apathy stuff.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it down here as well because there's a sizable amount of nurses that don't want to take the vaccine because of what their conspiracies about it as well. I guess this is me just putting the message out. If you guys are skeptical of the vaccine, there's more side effects to catching COVID than there are to taking that vaccine.
Exactly.
So wait like that. This is not me trusting big pharma or anything. I'm very skeptical of them as well. But if I had the choice and you can stick the needle in my arm, I'm going to take it, right? Because the side effects of the vaccine seem way less troublesome than the side effects of COVID. So putting that out there. And hi, everybody. So I have to be quick, but I got to hail you guys up. I hope you guys are doing well and you guys keep doing good work. I know Mickey. I am. And hi, Matt.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you,
call.
Dave.
But yes, that is exactly right. I mean, it's like my response at this point to I don't trust the vaccine is, do you trust COVID? All right, let's read a couple of these IMs. We'll get out of here. The Tim Caucus. Sam, MR has become a daily must listen for me, and I appreciate everything you do. I wish you and Nomiki still did Rising appearances. I don't not do them. I just don't. I haven't gotten invited for a while because, frankly, when they record, it's in the morning, and it's just difficult for me to do. And particularly during COVID, it's become very difficult for me to do extra stuff because I don't have babysitter anymore and all this stuff. It's got complicated, but those segments pre-pandemic were my first introduction to you two, as well as Michael, Professor Wolf, Kyle Kalinske, and others. I don't know that I would have found left YouTube if not for you all going on Rising. I mean, I'm definitely open to it. It's just really, I cannot tell you how many things I've been able to say that I've said, like, I just can't do it. I can't, I try and I forget and then I can't. And, Armin.
See, from my end, it's like I just keep being asked to do 6-hour live streams. I'm like, who has time for that? Who has energy for that?
I know. And Rising, like, at the start of that show, they had me come in person and they had me take an Amtrak out at like 4 a.m. because they wanted only in person. I think they've changed their, but that show is early.
Armin, after reading the new BBC reporting on mass cotton slavery in Xinjiang and the New York Times reporting on Nike and Coca-Cola lobbying for less regulation of forced labor production, I'm just going to punch the next guy who talks about modern capitalism's automation crisis in the mouth repeatedly. Not advocating for violence or whatever, but really, cotton capitalism has finally killed all poetry. History has stopped to rhyme, and now it actually has been beaten into just repeating itself. Why the F does capitalism get to outlive so many people when it's clearly barely going along with itself? Indeed, Wolf Girl, I'm so proud of you. Okay, thank you. Joe Judge, Sam, I want to say thanks to you and Third Love. My wife says their memory foam bras give her more support than she has ever had. I used to cut my game film sessions in order to examine the algorithms to help her shop for bras. But thanks to the Fit Finder, my wife's boyfriend. Okay,
this is the coach of this.
This is the Giants coach.
The coach of the Giants.
Is that what's going on? Okay.
I don't want to talk about the Giants this week.
We used to get a lot of cuck jokes that would end this way, and that one looks really suspicious to me. The real Granny Smith. Hi, Sam. Whatever you do, don't reveal the setup of your studio, filters and curtains and so on. Otherwise, Pac-Man's going to steal it again. Stop the steal. CBD's lingers. Sammy. Emma, how much did you lose on that safety last night? Scared money don't make no money.
I didn't bet on that game.
De Beers love you. Sam, been noticing that the New York Times has been sounding more hawkish on Iran since the assassination of its top nuclear scientist. Do you think this indicates where the center left is moving away from Obama-era policy? I hope not.
Interesting.
Unix Joker, if you want some good schadenfreude today, search on Twitter for Betfair fraud and behold, hundreds of MAGA guys took 10-1 and 100-1 odds that Trump winning the election after he'd already lost. Now realizing they've lost their life savings. Oh, God.
Yeah, there's so many guys. Like, that's a huge part of the people that really want Trump to win this thing somehow is the guys who put a lot of money on it.
I was looking to put some money on whether in 6 to 8 months the Republicans are going to come around like Joe Biden has been saying.
The fever will break.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's do 8 of these. Hi as Georgia Pine. You guys should check out to see where you are in the vaccine line. New York Times article where you input some basic factors and it will tell you even to your specific county how many people should get the vaccine before you. Sam Cedar's bra salesman. Sam, I got to be honest. I'm depressed. How long do we have to wait until the libertarians come back? I listened to old calls, but I almost have them memorized at this point. Yeah, we got to get on that. Maybe we got to put out like a YouTube ad. Sam is my new daddy. I hate to be doom and gloom, but I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this pandemic. While vaccines are promising, I don't think we'll have enough people getting it to be effective. My father-in-law's employer had a spike in cases reported. They not only offered free COVID testing, but $50 gift cards, and he was the only one of 2 people who got tested.
What?
But here's the thing, it's not going to be you get vaccinated and you don't have to wear, but you don't have to, you don't have to wear a mask, or you go, like, you're going to be able to go to the movies, but it's going to make things, you're going to just feel a certain amount of relief. I think low grade anxiety. That's what I think it's going to be for me. We'll see. But also, I think there's going to be pockets. I think it's going to be like, I bet you the vaccine, what do you call it? Usage or acceptance in, let's say, New England and the New York area and New Jersey is going to be,
huge,
double digits percentage wise higher than, let's say, I don't know,
Mississippi,
North Dakota,
Arizona.
Well, I think, the other thing is how much of this is going to be tied to employment, and with the employment shifts happening, how many people are going to be left out of having access to the vaccine because they're not in frontline industries or whatever the priorities and the line are. And will those people be inclined to step up and take the vaccine, mandated or not by who knows what entity?
I think you're going to be limited on your flights if you haven't been vaccinated. I mean, for that to be fair, everybody has to have the opportunity to get vaccinated, right? I mean, I think there's going to be situations where, like, after a certain period of time, you need to be vaccinated to get on a flight. And there's going to be stuff like,
But if you're unemployed, I mean, seriously, like
people are going to be putting their vaccination badges right up there. It's going to be one of their profile pics.
Oh, God.
Geek Wonk, I'd only counter Emma by saying I don't see Dorr isn't a class reductionist. He has zero class analysis, and that's part of the problem. Maybe an electoral reductionist?
Yeah, that's probably better.
Right.
You're right. I mean, I was being too charitable calling him a class reductionist.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's a class reduction. I don't even think he's a reductionist. Like, I think this is really, it's nihilism, because he doesn't even subscribe to any type of, like, he has these sort of signifiers, right? Medicare for all, but I don't even know that there's really, like,
is there any investment in what Medicare for all would do to humans?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that there is any even rubber meets the road. It is just signifiers. It's like, he's a guy who would argue against, 1 million people getting Medicaid expansion simply because it doesn't have the words Medicare for all in it. Like, it is really just it is like a football fan. No offense, but I mean, it's like literally he's just rooting for a team, and that team also, it's really just based upon his random ideas of what the team is.
Well, he was birthed into existence based on, like, rightful frustration with the Democratic establishment, and so that's the only mode he can do, even if, say, like, something good happens, and I don't know with his, say, Biden re-enters the Iran deal, but why wouldn't he do this or something? I mean, if he'd even talk about something like that. But
I think he's naturally a contrarian, but only if there's an audience attached to the opposite side, and if that audience can grow. If he can build, a set of voices who critique, AOC not being pure enough is to me, that is like straight up bad faith. I think there's something else going on there. I don't know why you would want to build up that audience right now and divide the left right now. When the left, I mean, if you hate Joe Biden so much, why are you trying to divide the only force that can pressure him?
My sense is that he doesn't even think that way. I just think that he just thinks that, like, it's the easiest thing for him to do. That's it. I mean, it is the easiest thing for him to do. I don't even think he thinks about it. I think it's just like, like, are you really, like, going to sit there and, I don't know, like, there's critiques you could launch at any of the people he talks about. Look at just the way his reaction is. It's like, there's like 4 or 5 people that he thinks are, like, in a certain club. And it's really has nothing to do. This is honestly, like, if you want to understand his political program, just think back to like the worst like drama situations you had in high school.
Yeah.
And everything that he does is far more consistent with that than anything else. And then throw in maybe a little bit of like, issues.
She called Pelosi Mama Bear, and I don't like Pelosi. She's not in my clique.
Honestly, I think there's a lot of that. Here is, a couple more IMs and we'll get out here. Jimmy just bought a $2 million house in LA. I think it's 1.9 million.
And there's no pool according to Variety. I Googled Jimmy Dore trying to get an article synopsis of this thing before we talked about it, and of course no major outlets covering it, but they did have an article in Variety about his new house.
Wow.
Anarcho PMC. Miranda Sings. Yes, that's who it is.
Yeah.
She was that YouTube. Yeah, she was that YouTube artist. I actually tried to, I knew somebody who represented her, and I can't remember how I knew them. And I asked them if I could get an autograph. She's like, sorry.
Why don't you get her on the show? That's even better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really for adults. Pause it, Sam. I just want to give you an idea of the kind of people Dore's attracting these days. Jimmy gave out AOC's office number and told his viewers to call in her office and demand they challenge Pelosi. Since then, AOC's office has been receiving nonstop calls outside the district, making demands, hurling racist and misogynistic insults. Just want to add, not all calls are like this, but a significant portion of them are. I mean, there you go. Liam, Sam, what do you read every day? Please give specifics, because a lot of people don't know what to read and then just don't read and then become a Jimmy Dore fan. I don't, I wish I could say I was discriminating, but I just try and read constantly. And so I have set up my Twitter feed like an RSS feed, and I just read on, every day I got a packet of stuff we don't get to that I read in on because I figure it's going to come up eventually. And so I don't have any particular sources that I am largely source agnostic. I mean, I'll even occasionally go I'll read Powerline just to get a sense of what kind of lunacy is going on over there. But then, I read the American Prospect. I read the New Republic, with regularity.
Most of these places have the email thing or the daily email thing. So even if you just want the top line items,
I read a lot of,
Prospects newsletter is good.
The Daily Post are obviously Sorota's thing, the Payday report. I read, so many Day-ins. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know. It just comes in and I just start to read half the time. I don't even know what, I have a sense of who the people are, but.
And I know we make fun of or get frustrated with some of the coverage from New York Times or Washington Post a lot, but in terms of just reporting on
of course
daily stories, I read multiple articles from both of them a day.
I despise Politico, but I read Politico Playbook to understand who the latest lobbyists are getting a job, an appointment, and whatever.
Or which section of some cabinet is angling to skewer another. I mean, it's just a gossip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Chaos MD. Jimmy is a clout chaser, and his anger is his only real hook because his takes and ideas are typically dumb or unhinged or nonsensical. He needs to be always pointing out things to make people angry, even if he needs to manufacture it, or else he loses money. When I first got into politics, began my journey leftward, I was a fan of Dore because when you start paying attention, it's infuriating to see how our society is constantly screwing us over. Exactly. Jimmy spoke to that anger and took some time for me to realize he's an idiot and not to be taken seriously. The importance of state and local funding cannot be emphasized enough. Who knows how many services will lose completely if they are allowed to end and all their employees let go. In Portland, we have a ballot initiative this year to pass a bond to float our parks department, or else large portions of it would cease to exist, because they almost got none of the revenue this summer that they normally get. Thankfully passed. But how many departments didn't get ballot measures to bail them out? And yes, people should understand, when these things go away, the startup costs to recreate an agency or something like that, or rebuild an agency are exponential. And there's no reason to believe there's going to be a big chunk of change comes in when things start. I mean, this will reverberate for years. Winnipeg Craig, we got two more. If you're interested in the dark underbelly of YouTube and its pranksters, you should have Ethan Klein from H3H3 on. He's been following with that beat of yours, and he and his wife were the first YouTubers to win a copyright court case. He's also broadly left-wing, and more time goes on. He has Hassan and ContraPoints on for interviews in the last little bit. I feel like I've heard that his name. I'm not. Check it out. Run PMC. A lot of criticism of Dora could just be leveled at Chapo too, but at least they're funny. I mean, I think they're more thoughtful, frankly.
Yeah,
they're a lot
100%. That's a
and funnier.
Wild comparison.
And politics, so there's that.
And they're more thoughtful. They're not just like it's, I think there are times where some of their takes are a little bit nihilistic, but it is far more thoughtful and
far more comedic than comedian John.
Yeah, it's funny and materialistic, so it's
And the final IM of the day.
Charge.
Well,
what?
That'll do. Bottom structure. What's to prevent Pelosi from accepting the progressives withholding their support and her extending an olive branch to GOP centrists, never Trumpers, to vote for her as speaker? I think that's unlikely, but it's, it's a good point. And then what happens? But, here's the other thing that we haven't really totally contemplated. They don't vote for her. Either they lose or they win, and then they're all shut out of everything.
That's right. That's it.
Like, if you're going to pick a fight with someone bigger than you, you better make sure that you do them a real permanent damage. Because if you don't, guess what? You're effed.
Go for the king. Better well win.
Exactly.
Whatever.
All right, folks. Check out Nomi's show. It's starting in just 3 minutes. Oh my God. You got to do something right now. You got to go.
Aaron Bastani, Akilah Lacey, Napoleon DeLegend. Join youtube.com/TheNomiQ Show.
See you tomorrow.
Boom.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I